You've probably heard of Samson and Delilah, maybe Gideon and his fleece, but do you know the real story behind the Book of Judges? Not the watered down versions, but the complete, uncensored account that reveals patterns of human nature, divine justice, and political chaos that are more relevant today than ever. In this video, we're going to unpack every judge, every cycle of rebellion and rescue, every shocking twist that makes this book the most intense political thriller in ancient literature. Trust me, you've never heard these stories told like this before. I really hope you had a great holiday with your loved ones. Before we dive in, feel free to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Your support means we can continue providing content like this. We really appreciate it. Also, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. Optionally, say hi in the comments. We're here to gather like-minded folks from around the world you can connect and potentially make new friends with. So without further ado, let's begin, shall we? The cycle begins. Death of a generation. Joshua dies. The man who led a nation across the Jordan, who witnessed walls crumble and cities fall, closes his eyes for the last time. With him goes something more than leadership. An entire generation fades into memory. The new generation rises in the hill country of Canaan. They know stories, perhaps. Tales told by firelight about walls that fell at a shout, about manna in the wilderness, about a sea that split in two. But they did not see these things. They did not feel the weight of covenant responsibility pressed into their hands by those who walked with Moses. The text states it plainly. They did not know the Lord or the works he had done for their people. This ignorance becomes the crack in the foundation. Everything that follows flows from this single devastating truth. The settlement pattern tells its own story. Archaeological surveys of the Central Highlands reveal small, scattered villages. No grand cities. No unified infrastructure. Just clusters of families clinging to rocky hillsides, growing barley and tending flocks. These communities share a common heritage, yet they function as separate entities. The tribe becomes the highest authority. The village elder speaks with final word. This fragmentation carries consequences. When threat arrives from the east or west, no central command mobilizes defense. When disputes arise between clans, no king settles the matter. When foreign gods appear on Canaanite altars in nearby valleys, no single voice rises to condemn the compromise. The Book of Judges presents its thesis early. A cycle emerges, relentless in its repetition. The people abandon their covenant. Oppression follows. They cry out in desperation. A deliverer rises. Peace returns. Then the cycle begins again. Each rotation digs the pit deeper. The judges who answer the cries grow more flawed. The oppressions become more internal. The peace grows shorter. The descent accelerates. The generation that knew Joshua maintained order through memory and witness. They had seen deliverance with their own eyes. They carried the weight of promise in their bones. But memory fades. Witness dies. The children of those witnesses inherit land, but not conviction. The tribal structure, once a strength during the wilderness wandering, becomes a weakness in settlement. Judah in the south pursues its own interests. Ephraim in the central hills guards its territory. Manasseh sprawls across the Jordan. Dan searches for land it can actually hold. These are not provinces of a kingdom. These are separate entities, bound only by distant kinship and fading memory. The religious life splinters along with political unity. Each village might have its own altar, each family its own shrine. The central sanctuary at Shiloh exists, but distance and danger make regular pilgrimage difficult. Local practice drifts from covenant law. Canaanite neighbors offer alternative answers to ancient questions about rain and harvest and fertility. The book opens with military efforts. Judah takes some cities, Simeon joins the campaign, but the list of failures grows longer than the victories. Jerusalem remains in Jebusite hands. Gezer stays Canaanite. The coastal plain with its iron chariots proves impossible to conquer. The Philistines hold the southwest. Megiddo in the Jezreel Valley remains unconquered. Hazor in the north, though destroyed once, rebuilds. These failures create a patchwork landscape. Israelite villages dot the highlands. Canaanite cities control the valleys and plains. The two populations share the land separated by geography and culture. Trade happens. Intermarriage occurs. Religious ideas flow both directions. The covenant warned against this exact scenario. The previous generation received clear instruction: drive out the inhabitants completely, destroy their altars, cut down their sacred poles, make no treaties. The reason given was not cruelty but preservation. Foreign gods would become a snare. The new generation makes different choices. They allow Canaanite populations to remain, often as forced labor. They settle near their cities. Their sons see Canaanite daughters. Their daughters marry into Canaanite families. The boundaries blur. 40 years pass. The elders who knew Joshua die. The stories grow distant. A young man in the hills might know his grandfather fought at Jericho, but that battle happened in another lifetime. The present demands attention. Crops need planting. Flocks need tending. The Canaanite in the next valley seems less like an enemy and more like a neighbor. The cycle's first turn approaches. The people do evil in the eyes of the Lord. The text repeats this phrase throughout the book, a drumbeat of decline. Evil here means abandoning the covenant, serving other gods, adopting foreign practices. The consequence arrives as oppression. A foreign king sees weakness. Raiders see opportunity. The scattered, disorganized tribes cannot mount effective resistance. What conquest failed to accomplish, subsequent invasion achieves. The people who were meant to possess the land find themselves possessed by it, subjects in their own inheritance. Desperation finally drives them to remember. They cry out. The sound reaches heaven. A deliverer rises from among them, empowered by divine spirit, leading them to victory. Peace returns, for a generation, maybe two. Then the deliverer dies. The cycle begins again. Each complete rotation takes decades. But the pattern compresses time. What took a generation to develop takes half that long the next time. The spiral tightens, the descent steepens. The Book of Judges stands as historical record and theological argument. It documents a dark period of Israelite history. It also presents a case for what happens when covenant community fractures, when memory fades, when each person does what seems right in their own eyes. The death of Joshua marks more than the passing of a leader. It signals the end of an era. The conquest generation, for all its failures and rebellions, maintained connection to the foundational events of national identity. They knew Egypt, they crossed the sea, they received the law, they entered the land. Their children inherit outcome without process. They live in houses they did not build, eat from vineyards they did not plant. The blessing becomes background, the covenant becomes custom, the living relationship becomes religious tradition, and in that shift, everything changes. The cycle begins its dark work. The story of Judges unfolds as a warning written in blood and chaos across 200 years. What follows is not a tale of heroes. It is a chronicle of decline, interrupted by moments of grace that grow increasingly desperate and ambiguous. The first judge waits in the wings. The pattern will soon take shape. The descent has begun. The failed conquest, archaeology versus the text. The book of Joshua paints one picture. The book of Judges paints another. Between these two accounts lies the messy reality of Canaan in the 12th century before the Common Era. Joshua describes a swift, decisive conquest. 3 campaigns, central, southern, northern, break the back of Canaanite resistance. Cities burn, kings fall. The land lies open for division among the tribes. Judges opens with a different scene. The tribes still fight to claim their allotted territories. Cities that should be conquered remain unconquered. The Canaanite population persists. The settlement is incomplete. Archaeology adds a third voice to this conversation. The earth itself speaks through pottery sherds, destruction layers, settlement patterns. What it reveals is neither total conquest nor complete failure. It shows transition, complexity, a gradual process spanning generations. Hazor stands as the prime example. This massive Canaanite city in the upper Jordan Valley dominated the north. Joshua records its destruction. Excavations confirm a major conflagration in the late 13th century. The lower city burns and is never rebuilt. The upper tell shows destruction, but then Hazor rebuilds. Not to its former glory, but it rebuilds nonetheless. Canaanite culture continues. The population persists. Israelite settlement in the area happens gradually in the highlands surrounding the valley, not in the valley itself. Megiddo tells a similar story. This strategic city guards the vital pass through the Carmel Ridge. Control Megiddo, and you control the main route connecting the coastal plain to the Jezreel Valley. The Book of Judges explicitly states that Manasseh could not drive out the inhabitants of Megiddo. Archaeological evidence confirms continuous occupation through this entire period. The city remains Canaanite. The coastal plain presents the clearest case of failed conquest. The Philistines control a pentapolis of cities: Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Gath, Ekron. These cities possess iron technology. They field chariots. The highland tribes, fighting on foot with bronze weapons, cannot dislodge them. The Book of Judges acknowledges this limitation directly. The plain remains unconquered. Jerusalem, destined to become the capital of a united kingdom, stays in Jebusite hands. The tribe of Judah cannot take it. The tribe of Benjamin cannot take it. The city sits on the border between their territories, independent, a Canaanite enclave in the heart of the highlands. This situation persists until David's conquest centuries later. Gezer in the Shephelah remains Canaanite. Beth Shean, guarding the eastern Jezreel Valley, remains Canaanite. Tanakh near Megiddo remains Canaanite. The list grows long. What then did the Israelites actually control? The highlands. The central mountain ridge running north to south through Canaan becomes the Israelite heartland. Archaeological surveys reveal a dramatic increase in small village sites in this region during the Iron Age USP period. These settlements share common characteristics: four-room houses, collared rim jars, lack of pig bones in refuse pits. This settlement pattern suggests pastoral groups transitioning to sedentary agriculture. They occupy the previously sparsely populated hill country. They clear forests. They terrace slopes. They dig cisterns to capture rainwater. They build small, unfortified villages. These highland communities exist alongside, not in place of, Canaanite population centers. The valleys and plains remain under Canaanite control. The two populations occupy different ecological niches in the same land. This reality creates inevitable interaction. Trade becomes necessary. The highlanders need access to plains resources. The valley cities need highland products. Exchange happens at border markets. Economic relationships develop. These relationships lead to social mixing. Intermarriage occurs despite prohibitions. Cultural practices flow both directions. Religious ideas cross boundaries. The Canaanite worship of Baal, focused on agricultural fertility, appeals to newly settled farmers. The sacred poles and high places dot the landscape. The text of Judges addresses this situation through the voice of divine messenger. An angel appears at Bochim and delivers a stinging rebuke. You made treaties with the inhabitants instead of driving them out. You did not tear down their altars. Therefore they will become thorns in your sides. Their gods will trap you. The people weep. They offer sacrifices, but nothing changes. The pattern is set. The compromise is complete. This coexistence explains the ease with which later generations adopt Canaanite practices. The Baals and Asherahs are not distant foreign deities. They are the gods of neighbors, trading partners, in-laws. Their shrines stand visible on nearby hilltops. Their festivals mark the agricultural calendar. The archaeological record shows no dramatic cultural break between late Canaanite and early Israelite material culture. The pottery styles evolve gradually. The house forms adapt rather than replace. The subsistence strategies shift incrementally. This suggests continuity, mixture, gradual change rather than sudden replacement. Some scholars argue for a primarily indigenous origin of early Israelite communities, Canaanites themselves transitioning into a new identity. Others maintain the biblical picture of external groups entering the land. The evidence supports both to some degree. The truth likely involves both immigration and indigenous transformation, creating a new ethnic identity from mixed origins. What matters for the Book of Judges is the result. The land is shared, not possessed. The cities are neighbors, not memories. The gods are options, not abominations. The covenant stands as ideal, but practice tells a different story. The military situation remains unstable. Without unified command, defense proves difficult. Each tribe must fend for itself when raiders come. The agricultural surplus gets plundered. The flocks are driven off. The people hide in caves and strongholds when enemies appear. The judge, when one arises, can rally multiple tribes for a specific threat. But when the crisis passes, the tribes return to independence. No standing army forms. No permanent alliance structures develop. Each victory provides temporary respite, not lasting security. The religious situation proves equally unstable. The covenant demands exclusive loyalty to one God, but that God seems distant at the central sanctuary. Meanwhile, the Baal demands attention in every growing season. Rain and harvest are immediate concerns. The Canaanite rituals promise practical results. Syncretism becomes the path of least resistance. Perhaps worship both. Perhaps the Lord controls the big picture while Baal manages the crops. Perhaps the covenant God and the fertility God can coexist in practice. Perhaps the law is meant as ideal rather than absolute requirement. These compromises make sense in context. They respond to real pressures and practical needs. They represent adaptive strategies for survival in a complex environment, but they violate the covenant at its core. They introduce foreign elements into worship that was meant to be pure. They blur boundaries that were meant to stay sharp. The Book of Judges shows the consequences. The failed conquest is not just military, it is religious, cultural, social. The people meant to be separate become entangled. The identity meant to be distinct becomes mixed. The worship meant to be pure becomes polluted. This sets the stage for everything that follows. The judges arise in a context of religious confusion and political fragmentation. They deliver from external oppression but cannot solve the internal corruption. Each victory is real but temporary. Each deliverance is genuine but incomplete. The conquest that was meant to happen in a generation takes centuries and is never fully completed. The land promised as inheritance remains contested. The security promised as reward remains elusive. The blessing attached to obedience remains largely theoretical. Archaeology reveals what the text implies. The gap between ideal and reality defines this era. The judges operate in that gap, called to deliver a people who refuse to fully embrace the covenant that defines their identity. The cycle can begin because the foundation is cracked. The failed conquest ensures that the rot will spread from outside in. Othniel and the Mesopotamian threat, the template judge. The first judge arrives almost as theory made flesh. Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, steps into the narrative as if designed to demonstrate how the system should work. His story comes stripped of complexity. No moral ambiguity clouds his actions. No character flaws mar his record. No tragic consequences follow his victory. He represents the ideal before reality intrudes. The oppression begins in standard fashion. The people serve the Baals and Asherahs. Divine anger kindles. A foreign king receives permission to dominate them. For 8 years, Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Aram-Naharaim, holds them subject. The name itself raises questions. Cushan-Rishathaim translates roughly as Cushan of double wickedness, which sounds less like a historical name and more like editorial commentary. Aram-Naharaim refers to Upper Mesopotamia, the region between the rivers, far to the northeast. How does a Mesopotamian king project power all the way to the hill country of Canaan? The text provides no details. No army composition, no garrison system, no administrative structure. The oppression exists as fact without mechanics. Some scholars suggest a closer threat, perhaps an Aramean chieftain from Syria, not distant Mesopotamia. The Aramean tribes were expanding during this period, establishing kingdoms in the region between Mesopotamia proper and Canaan. A Syrian oppressor makes more geographic sense than a Mesopotamian one. Others note that Mesopotamian influence did reach Canaan through various means. Trade routes connected the regions, political alliances formed, vassal relationships developed. The northern Canaanite cities maintained ties to the great powers beyond. The historical specifics remain murky. What matters for the narrative is the pattern. Foreign oppression answers Israelite apostasy. The people suffer under the weight of their choices. Time passes. Oppression deepens. Then they cry out. The text emphasizes this moment. Their cry reaches the Lord. This is the pivot point, the moment of recognition. They cannot deliver themselves. Outside help becomes necessary. The Spirit of the Lord comes upon Othniel. This phrase recurs throughout Judges, marking the moment of empowerment. Something beyond natural ability enters the scene. The judge becomes vessel for divine action. Othniel becomes judge over the people. He goes to war. The Lord gives Cushan-Rishathaim into his hands. Victory comes decisively. The oppressor falls. The land has peace for 40 years. That's the entire account. No battle details, no strategy discussions, no personal drama, just the pattern in its purest form: apostasy, oppression, cry, deliverance, peace. The 40-year peace is significant. This represents a full generation, a standard biblical unit of time suggesting complete restoration, not just military victory, but genuine peace, not just absence of war, but presence of order. Othniel himself comes with impeccable credentials. He already appeared in Joshua's account as the conqueror of Debir, winning Caleb's daughter Aksa as prize. He married into the generation of conquest heroes. His lineage connects him to Caleb, one of only two spies who urged immediate entry into Canaan at Kadesh Barnea. This background positions him as bridge between the conquest generation and the period of settlement. He carries forward the faith and courage that characterized the better moments of the previous era. His name means God is strength, or Lion of God. Even his identity announces divine connection. He embodies what the judge should be, a person transformed by divine spirit into a deliverer of the people. The pattern he establishes will repeat throughout the book, but it will never again appear so clean. Future judges will bring complications. Their victories will come mixed with failures, their deliverances will introduce new problems, peace will grow shorter, the cycles will accelerate. Othniel stands as template precisely because he is unrepeatable. He shows what could be if the people remained faithful, if the judges remained pure, if the system worked as designed. He is the thesis statement before the descent begins in earnest. The Mesopotamian threat, vague as it is, introduces a theme that will recur. Danger comes from multiple directions: Moab from the east, Midian from the desert, Philistia from the west, Aram from the north, Ammon from across the Jordan. The tribes face pressure on every border. This geographic reality shapes the judge system. Different judges arise in different regions to face different threats. No single judge rules all the tribes simultaneously. Othniel may judge the southern tribes, Deborah the northern, Gideon the central. Each crisis is local before it becomes national. The decentralized structure works when it works, as with Othniel. A regional threat receives a regional response. The affected tribes rally. The judge leads them to victory. Order returns to that area. The other tribes continue their own affairs. But this structure carries inherent weakness. No unified defense coordinates responses to multiple simultaneous threats. No central authority maintains order between crises. Each tribe depends on its own resources and whatever help neighbors might provide. Othniel's 40 years of peace papers over these structural problems. During his lifetime, his leadership apparently extends beyond military victory to governance. He judges disputes. He maintains order. He prevents the slide back into apostasy, at least for his generation. But then he dies. The text states this with finality. Othniel dies, and with him dies the generation of peace he secured. No son takes his place. No successor carries forward his work. The judge is not a dynasty. The position is not hereditary. When the judge dies, the system resets. The people again do evil in the sight of the Lord. The cycle begins anew. The template has been shown. Now the variations begin. The next judge will introduce elements absent from Othniel's story: cleverness, deception, violence, more personal and brutal. The clean lines start to blur. Othniel remains important not for what he does, but for what he represents. He is the measuring stick against which all subsequent judges will be compared and found wanting. He is the moment before the fall, the ideal before corruption sets in, the pattern before it fractures. His brief appearance sets expectations that the rest of the book will systematically undermine. The judges are meant to be like Othniel. They never are. The peace is meant to last, like his peace lasted. It never does. The pattern is meant to restore. Instead, it reveals progressive decay. The first judge demonstrates the system's potential. Every judge after him demonstrates its failure. Othniel's story is short because it is simple. The stories that follow grow longer as they grow more complex, more morally ambiguous, more tragic in their implications. But for one generation in the South, under a righteous judge empowered by divine spirit, the system worked. Oppression gave way to deliverance. Chaos gave way to order. Evil gave way to good. Peace reigned for 40 years. It would never be that simple again. The template judge serves his purpose and exits the stage. The real story of judges, the story of decline and desperation, begins with the next oppression. Eglon, king of Moab, waits in the wings. And with him comes Ehud, the left-handed assassin, bringing a new level of moral complexity to the work of deliverance. Ehud and the Moabite oppression, assassination and subversion. The Moabites come from across the Jordan. Their kingdom sits on the plateau east of the Dead Sea, a territory of high pastures and ancient trading routes. Their god Chemosh demands worship. Their king Eglon bears a name that means calf. The text emphasizes his size. Eglon is a very fat man. This detail appears nowhere else in the judge narratives. It serves a specific purpose. The assassination to come depends on this physical characteristic. The story is set up like a dark joke, building toward a punchline written in blood. Moab allies with Ammon and Amalek. This coalition crosses the Jordan and takes the city of palms, Jericho's oasis. The Israelites serve Moab for 18 years. The oppression settles in the east, affecting primarily the Transjordan tribes and Benjamin. 18 years is significant. Children born under oppression reach adulthood knowing only subjection. The tribute payments drain resources. The foreign presence reshapes daily life. Resentment builds. Then the cry goes up. The deliverer comes from Benjamin, the tribe whose territory suffers most directly from Moabite occupation. Ehud, son of Gera, appears in the narrative with one immediately striking detail. He is left-handed. The Hebrew is more specific. His right hand is restricted, possibly withered or disabled. This matters because Benjamin means son of the right hand. The tribe's name celebrates the right hand, yet their judge uses the left. This irony runs deep. The right hand symbolizes strength, favor, blessing. The left carries associations of weakness, deception, subversion. But weakness becomes weapon. Restriction becomes advantage. What appears as disadvantage becomes the key to the plan. Ehud makes himself a double-edged sword, a cubit in length, about 18 inches, short enough to conceal, long enough to be lethal. He straps it to his right thigh under his clothing. Guards will search the left side. Right-handed men wear weapons on the left for easy draw. No one checks the right thigh. The Israelites send tribute to Eglon at Jericho. Ehud leads the delegation. They present the tribute, make the proper gestures of submission, perform the expected ritual of vassal to overlord. The meeting proceeds normally. The tribute is accepted. The delegation is dismissed. They depart. They reach the stone quarries at Gilgal. There, Ehud sends the others away and returns alone. He approaches the guards and requests a private audience. He has a secret message for the king. The guards admit him. Eglon sits in his cool upper room seeking relief from the heat. The text specifies this is his summer chamber, a detail that places the scene. The architecture of the moment matters. Upper rooms provide privacy. Their isolation enables what comes next. Ehud approaches. He tells Eglon he has a word from God. The Moabite king rises from his seat, whether out of respect for a divine message or simply to receive it is unclear. The rising seals his fate. Ehud reaches with his left hand. He draws the blade from his right thigh. He plunges it into Eglon's belly. The text lingers on the grotesque details. The blade goes in completely. The fat closes over it. Ehud cannot draw it back out. The king's waist releases. This is not a clean war, death. This is intimate violence, described with uncomfortable specificity. The author wants the reader to see it, smell it, recoil from it. Ehud locks the doors from inside and escapes through the porch or window. The Hebrew is ambiguous. He exits unnoticed and flees toward the hill country. The servants wait. They see the locked doors and assume the king is relieving himself. Time passes. They grow concerned. They take a key and open the doors. They find their king dead on the floor. The delay is crucial. By the time the body is discovered, Ehud has reached the hill country. He sounds the trumpet in the highlands of Ephraim. The tribes rally. The moment of confusion becomes opportunity for revolt. Ehud leads them down to the Jordan. They seize the fords, the crossing points between east and west. No Moabite can escape back across the river. The invasion force is cut off from reinforcement and retreat. The text reports they struck down about 10,000 Moabites, all strong and able men. Not one escaped. The numbers are likely symbolic rather than literal. 10,000 represents a complete military force. The point is decisive victory. Moabite power in the region is broken. The land has peace for 80 years. This is twice the standard 40-year generation. Ehud's deliverance outlasts Othniel's. The victory is thorough. Moab does not return as threat during the judge period, but the method lingers in the mind. Deliverance came through deception, through exploiting trust, through subversion of hospitality. Ehud entered as tribute bearer and became assassin. He claimed a message from God and delivered death. The text presents this without moral commentary. No prophet condemns the method. No voice questions the means. Victory justifies the act. Moab's oppression ends. That appears sufficient. Yet something has shifted from Othniel's story. That account was warfare. army against army, victory through military prowess. This is assassination, individual against individual, victory through guile and personal violence. The Spirit of the Lord empowered Othniel for battle. The text never mentions the Spirit in connection with Ehud. He acts from his own cleverness. His plan depends on human insight into human psychology. He reads the situation, exploits the weakness, executes with precision. The left-hand detail continues to resonate. The Benjaminites later become known for ambidextrous slingers, soldiers who could fight with either hand. They turn what might be tribal weakness into tactical advantage. Ehud pioneers this approach. His name possibly means "where is the glory" or majesty. Some find irony in this. Where is the glory in an assassination? What majesty exists in stabbing an unarmed man? But the text seems to find glory enough in deliverance itself. The method matters less than the result. The 80 years of peace suggests divine approval. Twice the normal generation passes without oppression. The land rests. The people presumably worship properly during this extended period. Ehud must govern with some wisdom to maintain order so long. But the narrative has introduced new elements. The judge as trickster, deliverance through deception, violence that is personal, intimate, even grotesque. These themes will amplify in later stories. Gideon will use deception in warfare. Samson will operate almost entirely through trickery and personal violence. The progression continues. From Othniel's straightforward battle to Ehud's calculated assassination represents movement toward moral complexity. The judges adapt to circumstances. The situations grow messier. The solutions require darker methods. Moab deserved judgment. The text assumes this. Eglon oppressed Israel for 18 years. His elimination freed the people. The assassination can be read as justified execution of a tyrant, but it remains assassination nonetheless. Stealth and deception rather than open confrontation. A blade hidden under clothing rather than raised in battle. Ehud disappears after sounding the trumpet. He leads the taking of the fords and the slaughter of the Moabite soldiers, but then he vanishes from the narrative. Unlike Othniel, who judged Israel, Ehud delivers and then exits. The peace continues for 80 years, but we hear nothing of his governance, his life, his death. Perhaps that's appropriate. The assassin completes his mission and fades into background. The deed speaks for itself. The locked door, the dead king, the broken power. 80 years of peace written in the blood of one violent act. The cycle continues. The pattern holds, but the nature of deliverance has changed. The template has been modified. The judges are adapting to a world where righteousness requires deception, where deliverance demands assassination, where the left hand becomes the hand of salvation. Deborah and Barak, the woman who judged Israel. A palm tree grows between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. Under its shade sits Deborah, and to her come the people of Israel for judgment. The text introduces her without apology or explanation. She is prophet and judge both. She holds authority in a society that typically vests power in men. No one questions her position. No voice challenges her right to lead. Her name means bee, an insect both productive and dangerous. The symbolism fits. She brings order through wisdom and deliverance through war. She is married to Lapidoth, whose name means torches or flames. Some interpret this as description rather than a proper name, a woman of fire rather than wife of Lapidoth. Either way, the text shows no interest in her domestic arrangements. Her public role defines her. The oppression this time comes from the north. Jabin, king of Canaan, reigns in Hazor. His general Sisera commands 900 chariots of iron. For 20 years, this military force dominates the northern tribes. The chariots control the valleys and plains. The Israelite foot soldiers cannot stand against them. The text says Jabin cruelly oppressed the Israelites. The 20-year duration suggests economic exploitation beyond simple military domination. Forced labor, heavy tribute, the systematic extraction of resources from a conquered population. The chariots make resistance seem hopeless. Iron-fitted war machines drawn by horses, armed with archers and spearmen, able to maneuver rapidly across flat terrain. Against tribal militia on foot with bronze weapons, they are nearly invincible. The technological gap creates a power gap. But Deborah sees past the chariots. She summons Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali. Naphtali suffers directly under Canaanite oppression. Barak knows the enemy. He knows the terrain. He knows the stakes. Deborah delivers the Lord's command. Gather 10,000 men from Naphtali and Zebulun, lead them to Mount Tabor. The Lord will draw Sisera and his army to the Kishon River. There they will be delivered into your hand. Barak's response reveals his character. He will go only if Deborah accompanies him. If she stays behind, he refuses the mission. His reluctance is not cowardice, but caution. He will not proceed without prophetic presence. He needs the assurance that divine favor goes with him. Deborah agrees, but adds a condition. The glory will not be yours on this path. The Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. The prediction is cryptic. Barak might assume it refers to Deborah herself. The truth will prove stranger. She goes with him to Kadesh. The mobilization begins. 10,000 warriors gather from the northern tribes. The call goes beyond Naphtali and Zebulun. The urgency spreads. The moment has come to challenge the chariot force. They march to Mount Tabor, a distinctive cone-shaped hill rising dramatically from the Jezreel Valley. Its isolation makes it defensible. Its height provides tactical advantage. From its slopes, they can see the valley floor and the approaching enemy. News reaches Sisera. The Israelite army has assembled at Tabor. He mobilizes his full force. 900 chariots plus infantry move out from Harosheth Hagoyim. The Canaanite military machine rolls toward confrontation. Deborah gives the signal. This is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone out before you? Barak leads the 10,000 down from Tabor. What happens next unfolds as divine intervention through natural means. The Kishon River becomes the key. This seasonal watercourse can swell rapidly with rain. The text later references stars fighting from heaven, possibly poetic language for storm. The Song of Deborah mentions the Kishon sweeping the enemy away. The valley floor turns to mud. The iron chariots, supreme on firm ground, become liabilities in mire. Wheels sink. Horses struggle. The technological advantage reverses. What was unstoppable weapon becomes death trap. The Israelite foot soldiers press the attack. In the chaos of bogged chariots and confused forces, their mobility advantage asserts itself. They can move where chariots cannot. They can strike where heavy forces cannot maneuver. The rout is complete. The Lord threw Sisera and all his chariots into confusion. The Canaanite force breaks. Sisera abandons his chariot. The commander flees on foot while his army is cut down behind him. Barak pursues the fleeing chariots and army to Harosheth Hagoyim. Not a single soldier survives. The 900 iron chariots, terror of the north for 20 years, are neutralized in a single day. The oppressor's military might is shattered, but Sisera escapes the immediate slaughter. He runs north, seeking sanctuary. This brings him to the tent of jail, but that story deserves its own telling. For now, the focus remains on the victory and its aftermath. The Song of Deborah in chapter 5 provides the poetic version. It is one of the oldest texts in the Hebrew Bible, archaic language suggesting great antiquity. The song predates the prose account, perhaps composed shortly after the battle itself. The poem names the tribes that came: Ephraim, Benjamin, Machir, Manasseh, Zebulun, Issachar, Naphtali. It condemns the tribes that stayed away: Reuben, Gilead, Dan, Asher. They remained among the sheepfolds in the Jordan Valley by the seashore. They did not risk themselves for the common cause. This division reveals the tribal fragmentation. Even in national crisis, not all tribes respond. The victory at Kishon is partial coalition, not united nation. Some risk everything. Others stay safe. The song celebrates the warriors who came. It praises Zebulun and Naphtali, who risked their lives to death. It mocks the Canaanite mother peering through the window, waiting for a son who will never return, consoling herself with dreams of plunder that will never arrive. The poetic account emphasizes divine intervention more than the prose. The stars fought, the Kishon swept them away, heaven itself mobilized against Sisera. The victory belongs to the Lord, not to human strategy or strength. Yet human action matters. Deborah's leadership rallies the tribes. Barak's obedience leads to engagement. The warrior's courage turns opportunity into victory. Divine and human action interweave. Neither alone achieves deliverance. Deborah's role stands unique among the judges. She does not personally lead in combat. She provides prophetic guidance and authoritative presence. Her word initiates the campaign. Her encouragement sustains it. Her song celebrates it. She is called a mother in Israel. The title suggests protective authority, nurturing leadership. She guards the people like a mother guards children. She judges their disputes. She calls them to battle when necessary. She leads through wisdom rather than physical strength. Her partnership with Barak reveals a different model of leadership. He provides military command. She provides prophetic direction. Together, they accomplish what neither could alone. The reluctant warrior and the wise prophet combine strengths. The 20-year oppression ends. The land has peace for 40 years. Standard generation, standard pattern. But the story has broken new ground. A woman held authority. A partnership model succeeded. Victory came through divine intervention in natural event rather than pure military prowess. The northern tribes are free. The Canaanite threat is broken. Hazor's power is shattered. The 900 iron chariots rust in the Kishon Valley mud. The impossible victory stands as testimony that deliverance comes from the Lord, not from military technology or human strength. Deborah's palm tree continues to provide shade for judgment. Her voice continues to guide. Her presence reassures. For a generation, a woman's wisdom maintains order in Israel. The bee's sting defeated the chariot. The mother's care protected the children. The prophet's word proved true. But the peace will end. The cycle will turn again. And the victory, complete as it was, depends on an element not yet revealed. The tent of Jael waits beyond the battlefield. The hammer waits beside the peg. The promise about a woman's hand holds meaning no one yet suspects. Jael's hammer, the shocking face of deliverance. Sisera runs from defeat. His chariot is abandoned in the Kishon mud. His army is broken behind him. He flees on foot alone, seeking shelter. He reaches the territory of the Kenites. These are not Israelites, but allies, metalworkers who maintain careful neutrality. They camp separately, pursue their trade, avoid entanglement in the wars around them. The Kenites descend from Hobab, Moses' father-in-law. This connection gives them protected status among the Israelites, but they also maintain peace with the Canaanite kings. They are friends to all, enemies to none. They survive through this careful balance. Heber the Kenite had separated from his kinsmen. His tent stands apart, pitched near Kedesh. His wife is Jael. Her name means mountain goat, an animal sure-footed on dangerous terrain, able to navigate places others cannot reach. Sisera approaches her tent. Heber is away. Jael is alone. The exhausted general seeks sanctuary. Peace exists between Jabin and Heber's house. This should be safe ground. Jael comes out to meet him. She invites him in. "Turn aside, my lord. Turn aside to me. Do not be afraid." She offers hospitality. She provides safety. She welcomes the fugitive. He enters her tent. She covers him with a rug or blanket. He asks for water. She gives him milk instead, opening a skin of milk or possibly yogurt, something that sates thirst and promotes sleep. The gesture exceeds his request. The hospitality seems generous. He gives her instructions. Stand at the tent entrance. If anyone comes asking if a man is here, say no. He entrusts her with his concealment. He depends on her cooperation. He assumes her loyalty, follows the treaty between her household and his king. Then he lies down. Exhaustion from the battle and flight overtakes him. The milk settles in his stomach. The blanket warms him. The tent provides shelter. He sleeps. Jael takes a tent peg. These are substantial stakes driven deep to anchor tent fabric against wind. Made of wood or metal, a foot long or more, pointed at one end to penetrate earth or rock. She takes a hammer. This is a working tool, the implement used to drive pegs into hard ground. It is part of tent-making equipment, familiar in her hand from countless campsite setups. She approaches softly. He sleeps deeply, vulnerable in his exhaustion. She positions the peg against his temple. She swings the hammer. The blow drives the peg through his skull into the ground beneath. He does not wake. He passes from sleep to death. His head is pinned to the earth. The text is specific about the location. Through his temple. The soft spot where bone is thin. A single blow to the right spot ensures instant death. No struggle, no outcry, just the tent peg driven through until it anchors in the ground. When Barak arrives in pursuit, Jael goes out to meet him. She calls to him, "Come, I will show you the man you seek." She leads him into her tent. Sisera lies dead, the tent peg through his temple. The commander who led 900 chariots dies on the floor of a tent. The warrior who crushed Israel for 20 years falls to a woman with a hammer. The man who fled battle is felled by his host. The victor becomes victim. The strong falls to the weak. The act violates every code. Hospitality demands protection of guests. She invited him in. She gave him drink. She covered him. Then she destroyed him. Neutrality demands avoiding sides. The Kenites maintain peace with both Jabin and Israel. This act shatters that neutrality. It chooses a side definitively. Trust is betrayed. Sisera believed the treaty protected him. He rested in that confidence. His sleep was the sleep of one who felt safe. Jael's hammer answers that trust with violence, yet the text celebrates her act. The Song of Deborah calls her most blessed of women. Blessed above women in the tent is Jael. The poem describes the scene in vivid, almost exultant terms. She struck Sisera, she crushed his head, she shattered and pierced his temple. The song imagines his mother waiting at the window. Peering through the lattice, why is his chariot so long in coming? Why tarry the hoof beats? Her attendants answer. They imagine plunder. They console her with dreams of spoil, but the son will not return. Jael has seen to that. This is victory at its most uncomfortable. Not battle glory, but domestic murder. Not sword against sword, but hammer against sleeping head. Not honorable combat, but opportunistic elimination. Deborah's prophecy is fulfilled. The glory does not go to Barak. The Lord sells Sisera into the hand of a woman, not the woman anyone expected. Not Deborah, the prophet judge, but Jael, the Kenite tent keeper. The choice reveals something about divine methods. Deliverance comes through unexpected agents. The mountain goat navigates terrain others cannot. The metalworker's wife wields tools others overlook. The neutral party breaks neutrality at the crucial moment. Some read Jael's act as patriotic heroism. She sees opportunity to aid Israel and seizes it despite personal risk. Breaking the treaty exposes her and her household to Canaanite retaliation. She acts bravely for the sake of justice. Others see pragmatism. Sisera's army is destroyed. Canaanite power is broken. The wise move is to side with the victor. Preserving him gains nothing. Delivering him to Barak gains favor with the emerging power. Still others note sexual undertones in the language. The poem uses terminology that can suggest violation alongside violence. The imagery mixes domestic and martial, intimate and brutal. Jael's act carries layers of meaning beyond simple battlefield outcome. What cannot be disputed is effectiveness. The threat is permanently removed. The general who orchestrated oppression will orchestrate no more. The commander is finished. The military force has lost its head in multiple senses. The tent peg through the temple becomes iconic image. It represents the vulnerability of the powerful. It shows how might can fall to guile. It demonstrates that deliverance refuses to observe expected forms. Jael navigates impossible terrain. She is caught between powers, neutral in a war that permits no neutrality. She chooses a side in the moment of extremity. She uses what she has: hospitality, tools, opportunity. She acts decisively when action is required. The moral ambiguity does not trouble the text. Victory is victory. Deliverance is deliverance. The means are not interrogated. The ends justify themselves. 20 years of oppression are finished. The cruel commander is dead. Israel is free, but the method lingers. The judges deliver, but how they deliver grows increasingly problematic. Othniel fought straight battle. Ehud used deception and assassination. Now Jael employs hospitality betrayed, sleep violated, domestic space turned killing ground. The trajectory points downward even as victories accumulate. Each deliverance succeeds. Each also introduces new moral complexity. Each judge operates in grayer area than the previous. Jael's tent becomes site of deliverance and violation both. The tent peg meant to anchor shelter becomes weapon. The hammer meant to build becomes instrument of death. The woman meant to maintain household becomes warrior of sorts, though she fights without ever touching battlefield. She returns to anonymity after this moment. No judgment period is attributed to her. No reign of peace follows her action. She delivers the final blow in someone else's victory. She completes what Deborah initiated and Barak pursued. Most blessed of women, most enigmatic of deliverers, most troubling of heroes. Jael stands in the tent with hammer and peg, having navigated terrain no one else could cross, having done what no one else would do, having secured victory through means that simultaneously shock and satisfy. The Canaanite threat is ended. Sisera is dead. The land will have peace for 40 years. And in that peace, the people will remember the prophet under the palm tree, the reluctant warrior on Mount Tabor, and the tent keeper with the hammer who finished what heaven began. Gideon's call, hiding in a winepress. The people do evil again. The pattern repeats. The cycle turns. 7 years pass under Midianite oppression. But this oppression differs from previous ones. The Midianites do not occupy, they raid. They descend like locusts at harvest time, overwhelming the land. Their camels are without number. They come with Amalekites and peoples of the east, a confederation of desert raiders. The camel makes this possible. These early references to military use of camels in Judges represent some of the oldest mentions of camel cavalry in ancient sources. The camel extends raiding range, it increases speed, it carries more plunder, it transforms desert peoples into mobile strike forces. The raids follow seasonal pattern. At harvest, when grain stands ripe in the fields, the raiders come. They sweep across the valleys, they take the crops, they seize livestock. They leave nothing for Israel to live on, no sheep, no ox, no donkey. The text says they destroyed the produce of the land. This is economic warfare. Not conquest, but devastation. Not occupation, but predation. The Israelites plant. The Midianites harvest. Year after year, the pattern repeats. The people grow desperate. They make shelters in mountains, caves, and strongholds. When the raiders approach, the population flees to high places. They hide what they can. They watch their year's labor vanish in days. Then the Midianites depart to the desert, driving stolen herds before them. 7 years of this reduces the northern and central regions to poverty. The economic system collapses. Why plant if raiders will take the harvest? Why breed livestock if raiders will steal the flocks? The people are brought very low. In their misery, they cry out. The pattern demands it. But this time, before a deliverer appears, a prophet comes. An unnamed prophet delivers a message of rebuke. The Lord brought you up from Egypt. He delivered you from oppressors. He drove them out before you. He said, I am the Lord your God. You shall not worship the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But you have not obeyed. This prologue is unusual. The other judge cycles move quickly from cry to deliverer. Here, the cry receives a response that emphasizes covenant failure first. The people need to understand why they suffer before they can appreciate deliverance. Then the angel of the Lord comes to Ophrah. He sits under an oak tree belonging to Joash the Abiezrite. Nearby, Joash's son Gideon threshes wheat in a winepress. The location is significant. Wheat should be threshed on an exposed threshing floor where wind can separate chaff. The winnowing process requires air movement. A winepress is sheltered, usually dug into rock, designed to collect liquid, not separate grain. Gideon hides his activity. The winepress conceals him from Midianite scouts. Better to thresh inefficiently in secret than lose everything in the open. Better some grain than no grain. This is the psychology of the oppressed. The angel appears and greets him. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. The greeting must seem absurd. Gideon crouches in a winepress, furtively threshing a handful of wheat, terrified of raiders. Mighty warrior? The irony is thick. Gideon's response reveals his mindset. If the Lord is with us, why has all this happened? Where are the wonders our fathers told us about? Did the Lord not bring us up from Egypt? But now he has abandoned us. He has given us into Midian's hand. This is not the voice of faith. This is complaint, doubt, even accusation. Gideon has heard the stories. His generation knows the history. But present experience contradicts past promise. The God who delivered seems to have departed. The covenant appears broken. The Lord turns to him directly. Go in this strength you have and save Israel from Midian. Am I not sending you? The address shifts from angel to the Lord himself. The distinction blurs. The messenger and the sender merge. This is theophany, divine appearance, direct encounter with the holy. Gideon protests. How can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh. I am the least in my family. He knows his place in the social hierarchy. The Abiezrites are minor clan. Within that clan, he ranks low. He has no platform for leadership. The Lord answers simply, I will be with you. You will strike down the Midianites as one man. Divine presence overturns human weakness. The math changes when God enters the equation. But Gideon needs proof. If I have found favor in your eyes, give me a sign. He asks the visitor to wait while he prepares an offering. He brings out a young goat and unleavened bread. He presents them under the oak. The angel instructs him to place them on a rock. Fire flares from the rock, consuming the offering. The angel vanishes. Gideon realizes who he has encountered. Terror seizes him. I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. The expectation is death. No one can see God and live. But the Lord reassures him, peace. Do not fear, you will not die. Gideon builds an altar there. He names it, "The Lord is Peace." The structure stands in Ophrah as testimony to the encounter. That night, the Lord gives another command. Take your father's bull and a second bull, 7 years old. Tear down your father's altar to Baal. Cut down the Asherah pole beside it. Build an altar to the Lord on this stronghold. Sacrifice the bull using the wood from the pole. This is dangerous command. The altar belongs to Gideon's father. The town presumably worships there. Destroying it will provoke community outrage. But covenant relationship demands exclusive loyalty. The Baal altar must fall before Midian can fall. Gideon obeys, but he does it at night with 10 servants. He fears his family and the men of the town. Courage has limits. The call is accepted, the obedience is real, but fear tempers action. Morning comes, the town discovers the destroyed altar, the cut-down pole, the new altar with sacrifice still smoking. They investigate. They learn Gideon, son of Joash, did this. They demand his death. Bring out your son. He has torn down the altar of Baal. He must die for this. Joash, father of the accused, defends his son. His response is masterful. If Baal is a god, let him defend himself. Let him contend with the one who tore down his altar. The logic is devastating. Why should men defend a god? If Baal has power, let him act. If he cannot protect his own altar, why worship him? The argument exposes the impotence of the idol. The town accepts this reasoning. No mob justice follows. Instead, they give Gideon a new name, Jerub-Baal, meaning let Baal contend. The name commemorates his act and the father's challenge. This initial test proves crucial. Before Gideon faces external enemy, he must confront internal idolatry. Before he delivers Israel from Midian, he must deliver his own household from false worship. The personal precedes the national. The destroyed altar signals shift. Gideon moves from hiding to action, from threshing secretly to acting publicly, from least in his family to leader of religious reform. The reluctant warrior begins to emerge, but reluctance remains. The winepress mentality persists. The man called mighty warrior still sees himself as weak. The one told to deliver Israel still doubts. The cycle's most complex judge is taking shape, a man of action plagued by uncertainty, of courage mixed with fear, of obedience tainted by reluctance. The Midianites are gathering. The crisis approaches. The judge has been called, but he is not ready, not yet. More signs will be needed, more tests, more assurance. Gideon will negotiate with God like no judge before him. The fleece is still to come. The fleece and the 300, testing God and tactical faith. The Midianites cross the Jordan. Amalekites join them. The eastern peoples gather. They camp in the valley of Jezreel, that great depression between the hills of Galilee and the mountains of Samaria. The raiding force assembles for another harvest season of plunder. The Spirit of the Lord comes upon Gideon. This is the empowerment moment, the divine anointing that marks the judge. He sounds the trumpet. Abiezer rallies to him. His own clan responds first. He sends messengers through Manasseh, through Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali. The northern and central tribes mobilize. 32,000 men gather at the spring of Harod. This is substantial force, larger than previous judge armies. The crisis is urgent. The threat is immediate. The moment has come. But Gideon hesitates. The call is clear. The Spirit has come. The army has assembled. Yet doubt gnaws at him. He needs more certainty. He proposes a test. If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, and the conditional phrasing itself reveals his uncertainty, then I will place a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If dew is on the fleece only while the ground is dry, then I will know you will deliver. This is remarkable negotiation. Gideon bargains with the divine. He sets conditions. He demands signs. The boldness of it stands out. No other judge makes such requests. Morning comes. Gideon rises early. He checks the fleece. It is soaked. He wrings out a bowl full of water. The surrounding ground is dry. The sign appears exactly as requested, but it proves insufficient. Gideon asks again, "Do not be angry with me. Let me make one more test. This time, let the fleece be dry and the ground wet." He requires the opposite condition, the reversal that eliminates natural explanation. The second morning, the fleece is dry. The ground is wet with dew. Both signs have appeared. The supernatural element is confirmed. The test is satisfied. Some read this as faithless doubt. Gideon should trust the initial call. The Spirit has come. The sign of the consumed offering already proved divine favor. Why demand more? Others see wisdom. Gideon leads 32,000 men into battle against overwhelming force. His doubt protects them. Better to be certain than to lead people into disaster based on misunderstood call. The stakes are too high for assumption. The text passes no judgment on the tests. The Lord accommodates them. Both signs appear. The requests are granted. Perhaps divine patience recognizes human need for assurance when the cost of error is measured in lives. With certainty established, the campaign begins. But immediately, God intervenes with unexpected instruction. You have too many men. If Israel defeats Midian with this force, they will boast that their own strength saved them. The logic is theological. Deliverance must clearly come from divine source, not human might. The people need to learn dependence, not self-sufficiency. The victory must teach the right lesson. God instructs Gideon to reduce the army. Announce that anyone fearful or trembling may leave. 22,000 depart. Only 10,000 remain. This is dramatic reduction. 2/3 of the force goes home. But even this is too many. The Lord says there are still too many men. Bring them down to the water. I will test them there. The test is simple. Watch how they drink. Most kneel down and drink directly, getting their faces close to the water. 300 bring water to their mouths with their hands, lapping like dogs, keeping their heads up and eyes scanning surroundings. This second group shows instinctive vigilance. Even while drinking, they maintain awareness. They don't lose themselves in the act. They stay alert to danger. These are the ones selected. But the selection's logic matters less than its result. 300 men against the vast Midianite camp. The ratio is absurd. The odds are impossible. This is precisely the point. Human victory is ruled out. Divine deliverance becomes the only explanation. Gideon receives his force. Then the Lord gives him an unusual provision. If you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah. Listen to what they are saying. Afterward, your hands will be strengthened. Even now, even after the fleece and the spirit and the signs, God acknowledges Gideon's fear. No rebuke comes, just an offer of further encouragement. The Lord meets Gideon at his level of need. Gideon and Purah sneak to the edge of the Midianite camp. The description emphasizes the enemy's numbers. They lay in the valley like locusts in abundance. Their camels are innumerable as the sand on the seashore. The visual overwhelms. How can 300 challenge this? They creep close enough to hear conversation. A man is telling his companion a dream. I dreamed a loaf of barley bread came tumbling into our camp. It struck a tent, overturned it, and collapsed it. The companion interprets. This can be nothing other than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash. God has given Midian and the whole camp into his hands. The enemy knows. They have heard of him. They fear him. Their own dreams testify to coming defeat. Gideon hears this and worships. The doubt breaks. He returns to camp energized. Get up. The Lord has given the Midianite camp into your hands. He divides the 300 into 3 companies. He gives each man a trumpet and an empty jar with a torch inside. The plan is psychological warfare. No direct confrontation, no battle lines, just noise, light, and confusion in the night. Watch me and do as I do. When my group blows trumpets, blow yours all around the camp and shout for the Lord and for Gideon. They position themselves around the camp in 3 groups. The middle watch begins, the darkest hours after midnight. The Midianites sleep, trusting their sentries and their numbers. At Gideon's signal, the 300 blow their trumpets. They smash their jars, exposing the torches. Light and sound erupt simultaneously from 3 directions. They shout the battle cry. The effect is devastating. The Midianites wake to chaos. Trumpets blare. Torches burn. The shouts suggest massive force surrounding them. In darkness and confusion, they cannot assess the actual numbers. The 3 groups sound like 3 divisions of thousands. Panic spreads. The Lord sets every man's sword against his companion throughout the camp. They attack each other in the confusion. Some flee. The camp dissolves into chaos. The army flees toward Beth Shittah, toward Zerera, to the border of Abel Mahola near Tabbath. The flight is general, uncoordinated, desperate. The raiders who came as locusts flee like scattered sheep. Gideon calls out the rest of Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali. The tribes who sent their fearful home now pursue the fleeing enemy. The 22,000 who left joined the chase. The 300 held the line. Now the multitude finishes the work. Word goes to Ephraim. Seize the fords of the Jordan. Cut off their retreat. The Ephraimites take the waters down to Beth Barah. They capture 2 Midianite leaders, Oreb and Zeb. The raven and the wolf both fall. The victory is complete. The vast raiding force is broken. The camel cavalry is routed. The 7-year oppression ends in a single night. 300 men with trumpets and torches accomplish what 32,000 with swords could not. The battle demonstrates core principle. Deliverance comes through divine power, not human strength. The method is unconventional because convention trusts human capability. The numbers are reduced because large forces tempt self-reliance. The tactics are strange because normal warfare credits human skill. Gideon's doubt is accommodated but also corrected. The fleece tests provided assurance, the army reduction provided lesson. The overheard dream provided encouragement. The victory provided proof. Each step addresses his weakness while moving toward the goal. The reluctant warrior becomes effective judge through divine patience and human obedience. The fearful man accomplishes mighty deliverance because he finally acts despite fear. The one who hid in winepress leads assault on overwhelming force. But the story is not finished. Victory in battle does not equal victory in peace. The Ephraimites are angry. The pursuit continues across Jordan. The test of success will prove harder than the test of battle. The seeds of Gideon's eventual fall are planted in this moment of triumph. Gideon's fall, the ephod and the seeds of kingship. The victory celebration sours quickly. The Ephraimites confront Gideon with sharp accusation. Why did you not call us when you went to fight Midian? They quarrel with him violently. Ephraim holds central position among the tribes. They carry prestige from their connection to Joseph, from their size and strength, from their territory. Being excluded from the initial call to battle wounds their pride. Gideon answers diplomatically, "What have I accomplished compared to you? Are not the gleanings of Ephraim better than the full harvest of Abiezer? God gave you the leaders of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. What could I do compared to that?" The response is masterful de-escalation. He credits them with a greater achievement. He minimizes his own clan's contribution. He attributes their success to divine favor. The soft answer turns away wrath. Their anger subsides. But the incident reveals tension. The tribes compete for honor even in deliverance. Regional jealousies persist. Unity is temporary, achieved only in crisis, dissolving when crisis passes. Gideon crosses the Jordan in pursuit of the fleeing Midianite kings, Zebah and Zalmunna. His 300 are exhausted but still pursuing. They reach Succoth and ask for food. "Give my troops some bread." They are worn out, and I am still pursuing the Midianite kings. The officials of Succoth refuse. "Do you already have Zebah and Zalmunna in your hands? Why should we give bread to your army?" They question his chances. They fear Midianite retaliation if the pursuit fails. They protect themselves. Gideon's response is harsh. When the Lord gives them into my hand, I will tear your flesh with desert thorns and briars. The threat is specific and violent. He will remember this refusal. At Peniel, the same request meets the same response. Gideon makes the same threat. When I return in triumph, I will tear down this tower. He continues pursuit. He catches the Midianite force off guard at Karkor. 15,000 remain from an army of 135,000 fallen. He captures Zebah and Zalmunna. On his return, he carries out his threats. At Succoth, he takes the elders of the city and teaches them a lesson with desert thorns and briars. He pulls down the tower of Peniel. He unalives the men of the town. These are fellow Israelites, Transjordan tribes, distant kin. Their crime was refusing aid. Their punishment is brutality. The deliverer becomes harsh enforcer. The judge executes judgment with thorns and rubble, thispa. Then he questions Zebah and Zalmunna. What kind of men did you eliminate at Tabor? They answer that each resembled him, bearing the form of princes. Gideon identifies them as his brothers, sons of his mother. If you had spared them, I would spare you now. He orders his son Jether to end them. But the boy is young. He fears to draw his sword. The kings mock his hesitation. Rise yourself and strike us down. Show yourself a man. Gideon does so, taking also the crescent ornaments from their camels' necks. The personal vengeance is complete. But it reveals disturbing evolution. The judge acts from private motive alongside public duty. The deliverer serves personal vendetta alongside national interest. The lines blur between righteous judgment and individual revenge. The people then make an offer that changes everything. Rule over us, you, your son, and your grandson. You have delivered us from Midian's hand. They propose dynasty. They want hereditary kingship. The crisis has convinced them that central authority is needed. Gideon refuses. The response sounds righteous. I will not rule over you, nor will my son. The Lord will rule over you. This appears to be covenant faithfulness, rejection of human monarchy in favor of divine kingship. But then he makes a request. Give me an earring from each of your plunder. The Midianites wore gold earrings, being Ishmaelites. The people readily agree. They spread out a garment, and each throws in an earring from his plunder. The weight of gold earrings collected comes to 1,700 shekels gold, besides the crescent ornaments, pendants, purple garments worn by Midianite kings, and chains from their camels' necks. This is substantial wealth. Gideon makes an ephod from the gold. The ephod is priestly garment used in seeking divine guidance. But this one is different. He places it in his own town, Ophrah. It becomes object of worship. All Israel prostitutes themselves to it there. It becomes a snare to Gideon and his family. The text is clear in its judgment. What was meant as religious object becomes idol. What was intended for guidance becomes trap. The irony is sharp. Gideon tore down his father's altar to Baal. He cut down the Asherah pole. He initiated religious reform. Now he creates a new center of false worship. The reformer becomes corrupter. The deliverer becomes stumbling block. His refusal of formal kingship rings hollow. He may not take the title, but he takes the wealth. He may not found dynasty in name, but his family gains status and power. He names one son Abimelech, my father is king. The name itself contradicts the disclaimer. Gideon acquires many wives. The text notes this without comment, but polygamy at this scale indicates royal ambition. Kings have harems. Judges should not. The line between judge and monarch blurs in practice, even as it is maintained in theory. He has 70 sons from his many wives. The number suggests wealth and status. He also has a concubine in Shechem who bears him a son, Abimelech. This son will matter greatly. This son will reveal what Gideon's refusal of kingship actually meant. The land has peace for 40 years during Gideon's lifetime. The standard generation, the oppression is ended. The raiders do not return. Midian is subdued. The deliverance is real and lasting in its immediate effects. But Gideon dies. As soon as he is dead, the Israelites again prostitute themselves to the Baals. They make Baal-berith their god. They do not remember the Lord who delivered them from enemies on every side. They show no kindness to the house of Jerubbaal despite all the good he did for Israel. The cycle turns with brutal speed. The generation of peace dies. The next generation forgets. The pattern repeats. But this time, something worse follows. The failed kingship produces actual attempt at kingship. The rejected crown is seized by force. The son named "My Father is King" will try to make it true. Gideon's story shows the descent clearly. He begins in fear, hiding in winepress. God calls him and he responds with tests and doubts. God accommodates, provides signs, reduces the army, grants victory. The deliverance is genuine. The judge functions as designed, but success corrupts. The wealth accumulates, the wives multiply, the sons proliferate, the ephod is fashioned. The snare is set, power concentrates, the trappings of kingship appear even as the title is refused, and when he dies, it all unravels. The religious reform was temporary, the peace was circumstantial, the deliverance was military, not spiritual. Nothing fundamental changed. The people returned to Baals the moment the deliverer's restraining presence is removed. Gideon, the mighty warrior, became Gideon, the wealthy patriarch, became Gideon, the inadvertent idolater. The reluctant hero became the ambiguous leader, became the problematic legacy. The judge meant to point to divine kingship created conditions for human monarchy's darkest expression. The seeds of kingship planted in Gideon's compromise will sprout in Abimelech's violence. The ephod in Ophrah will give way to crowning in Shechem. The man who said, "I will not rule," will father a son who says, "I will rule or eliminate all rivals." The next chapter is fratricide. The judge cycle is about to produce its anti-judge. Abimelech, the anti-judge and fratricide. Abimelech goes to his mother's relatives in Shechem. He carries a proposal. Which is better for you, to have 70 men rule over you or just one? Remember, I am your flesh and blood. The appeal is tribal. Shechem is his mother's city. These are his kinsmen through her. He plays on local loyalty against the sons of Gideon's many wives. He frames his ambition as their interest. His mother's brothers speak to all the citizens of Shechem on his behalf. The argument resonates. The Shechemites' hearts incline toward Abimelech. He is their brother, after all. The local connection outweighs the father's legacy. They give him 70 pieces of silver from the temple of Baal Berith. The funding comes from idolatrous worship. The money is temple treasury used to finance political ambition. Religion and power merge in corruption. With this silver, Abimelech hires reckless scoundrels. These are not citizens rallying to a cause. These are mercenaries, violent men willing to do anything for pay. He assembles a private army of thugs. He goes to his father's house at Ophrah. On one stone, he eliminates his 70 brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal. The mass execution is efficient and public. One stone serves as communal altar of blood. The method suggests ritual as much as murder. But Jotham, the youngest son, survives. He hides during the massacre. He alone escapes the stone of slaughter. He alone remains to witness against the fratricide. The citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo gather. They make Abimelech king by the great tree at the pillar in Shechem. The coronation happens at a sacred site, lending religious legitimacy to political seizure. The people crown him. The first king in Israel is born through blood and bribery. When Jotham hears this, he climbs to the top of Mount Gerizim. He stands above the city and calls out. His voice echoes down the mountainside. Listen to me, citizens of Shechem, so that God may listen to you. He tells a fable. The trees once went out to anoint a king. They asked the olive tree first, should I give up my oil, by which gods and men are honored, to hold sway over the trees? The olive refuses. They ask the fig tree, should I give up my fruit so good and sweet to hold sway over the trees? The fig refuses. They ask the vine, should I give up my wine, which cheers gods and men, to hold sway over the trees? The vine refuses. Finally, they ask the thorn bush. The thorn bush accepts. Come and take refuge in my shade, but if not, let fire come out of the thorn bush and consume the cedars of Lebanon. The meaning is clear. Productive trees refuse kingship because it would interrupt their fruitful work. Only the worthless thorn bush, producing nothing of value, seeks power over others, and the thorn bush's reign ends in consuming fire. Jotham applies the parable. If you have acted honorably in making Abimelech king, if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his family, if you have treated him as his deeds deserved, then may you find joy in Abimelech, and may he find joy in you. But if not, let fire come out from Abimelech and consume the citizens of Shechem. Let fire come from the citizens and consume Abimelech. The curse is mutual destruction. The king will devour the people. The people will devour the king. Jotham flees to Beer. He stays there beyond Abimelech's reach. The survivor becomes exile. The witness becomes refugee. His words hang over the city like smoke. Abimelech rules Israel for 3 years. The term rule is used, not judge. He does not deliver from oppression. He is the oppression. He establishes monarchy through violence and maintains it through force. Then God sends a spirit of hostility between Abimelech and the citizens of Shechem. The alliance fractures. The makers of the king turn against their creation. The relationship sours into mutual suspicion and hatred. The text attributes this to divine action. God acts so that the violence done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might be avenged, their blood laid on their brother and on the citizens who helped him. Justice delayed becomes justice administered through poetic means. The citizens set ambushes for Abimelech on the hilltops. They rob everyone passing by. Their rebellion is indiscriminate violence. They have learned well from the king they crowned. Gaal, son of Ebed, moves into Shechem with his clan. The citizens trust him. During the harvest festival, they hold celebration in the temple of their god. They eat, drink, and curse Abimelech. The wine loosens tongues. The temple emboldens spirits. Gaal speaks up. Who is Abimelech, and who is Shechem that we should serve him? Isn't he Jerubbaal's son? Isn't Zebul his deputy? Serve the men of Hamor, Shechem's father. Why should we serve him? If only this people were under my command, I would get rid of him. The challenge is direct. The ambition is naked. Gaal offers himself as alternative to Abimelech. The citizens, drunk and angry, cheer the rebellion. Zebul, governor of the city and Abimelech's deputy, hears these words. His anger burns. He sends messengers secretly to Abimelech. Gaal, son of Ebed, and his clan have come to Shechem and are stirring up the city against you. Come by night with your men and lie in wait in the fields. In the morning make your move against the city. Abimelech acts on this intelligence. He divides his men into four companies. They take positions around Shechem under cover of darkness. When Gaal comes out to stand at the city gate, Abimelech and his men rise from their positions. Gaal sees them coming. He says to Zabul, "Look, people are coming down from the hilltops." Zabul plays innocent. You mistake the shadows of the mountains for men. But as they approach closer, Gaal realizes his error. Look, people are coming down from the center of the land, and one company is coming from the direction of the diviner's tree. Zabul springs his trap. Where's your big talk now, you who said, "Who is Abimelech that we should serve him?" Aren't these the men you ridiculed? Go out and fight them. The mockery is sharp. The governor reveals his loyalty. Gaal leads out the citizens. They fight Abimelech. The rebels are defeated. Many fall wounded up to the entrance of the gate. Abimelech pursues them back into the city. Zebul drives Gaal and his clan from Shechem. The rebellion is crushed. The next day, the people go out to work the fields. Abimelech is informed. He takes his men, divides them into three companies, and sets an ambush. When the people come out of the city, he rises up against them and strikes them down. Abimelech and his company rush forward to position themselves at the city gate. Two companies rush upon those in the fields and strike them down. All day long, Abimelech presses the attack. He captures the city. He eliminates all its people. He razes the city and scatters salt over it. The salt is symbolic gesture of complete destruction. The cursed ground will bear nothing. The city is not just conquered, but erased. Abimelech leaves monument of desolation. The citizens who held the tower of Shechem hear of this. They enter the stronghold of the temple of El-Berith. Abimelech learns they have assembled there. He leads his men up Mount Zalmon. He takes an axe and cuts off a tree branch. He lifts it to his shoulder and commands his men to do the same. Quick, do what you have seen me do. Each man cuts a branch. They follow Abimelech to the stronghold. They pile the branches against it and set them on fire. The stronghold burns with the people inside. About 1,000 men and women, all the citizens of the Tower of Shechem, perish in the flames. The thorn bush's fire consumes the trees. Jotham's curse finds fulfillment. The people who made Abimelech king die by his hand. The massacre is complete. Shechem is destroyed. The alliance ends in mutual destruction exactly as prophesied. But Abimelech is not finished. He moves against Thebez. He captures that city as well. The people flee to a strong tower within the city. They lock themselves inside and climb to the tower roof. The pattern from Shechem repeats. Abimelech approaches the tower to set it on fire. He comes near the entrance. A woman drops an upper millstone from the roof. The grinding stone falls directly on his head. His skull cracks. Urgently he calls to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and end me, so they cannot say a woman did this." The young man complies. Abimelech dies. When the Israelites see he is dead, they disperse to their homes. The anti-king dies by a woman's hand. The man who seized power through violence falls to improvised weapon. The millstone, domestic tool used by women to grind grain, becomes instrument of divine justice. The irony is complete. The text adds theological commentary. God repaid the wickedness of Abimelech, which he had done to his father in eliminating his 70 brothers. God also made the men of Shechem pay for all their wickedness. The curse of Jotham, son of Jerubbaal, came upon them. This is the anti-judge. He does not deliver Israel, but oppresses it. He does not respond to oppression, but creates it. He does not arise through divine call, but through human ambition. He rules not by covenant, but by violence. He brings not peace, but destruction. His 3-year reign stands as warning. This is what human kingship looks like without divine authorization. This is monarchy born from blood rather than blessing. This is power seized rather than granted. The thorn bush consumes the trees, the fire spreads, nothing grows from the salted ground. 70 brothers die on one stone. Thousands die in Shechem's destruction. More die in the burned stronghold. Abimelech himself falls to a millstone. The body count mounts. The cycle of violence consumes everyone involved. The curse runs its course. The fable becomes fact. After Abimelech, no one will try to make themselves king for a generation. The lesson is too fresh, the memory too bloody. The people will return to the judge pattern, flawed as it is, because they have seen the alternative. They have tasted the thorn bush's fire. They know what monarchy without mandate produces. But the question remains. The people wanted a king. They will want one again. The judge system is failing. The cycles are worsening. The oppressions are growing more frequent and severe. Something must change. Someone must provide order. The need Abimelech exploited is real, even if his answer was abomination. The anti-judge exits in blood and broken skull. The land shudders. The cycle will continue. But the seed of kingship, planted in Gideon's compromise and watered by Abimelech's violence, remains in the soil. It will sprout again, though not yet. First must come more judges, each more tragic than the last, until the people's cry for a king becomes irresistible. Jephthah the outcast, the bargain of a desperate man. The land of Gilead lies east of the Jordan River, a buffer zone between settled tribes and the nomadic peoples beyond. Here, a son is born to a man named Gilead, born of a woman who is not his wife. The text calls her a prostitute. The boy's name is Jephthah. His half-brothers grow up in the same household. They watch him. They resent him. When their father dies, they drive Jephthah away with words that cut deeper than bronze. "You shall not inherit in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman." Jephthah flees to the land of Tob, a frontier region where questions about lineage matter less than skill with a blade. He gathers around himself empty men, those with nothing to lose. They become raiders, mercenaries. Jephthah learns to lead not through birthright, but through necessity. Meanwhile, the Ammonites gather their forces. These are descendants of Lot, dwelling east in the highlands and valleys beyond Israelite territory. For 18 years, they oppress Gilead. They cross the Jordan. They harass Judah, Benjamin, Ephraim. The military pressure becomes unbearable. The elders of Gilead face a crisis. Their own forces cannot match the Ammonite threat. They need a commander, someone ruthless, experienced, willing to fight without the luxury of tribal politics. They remember the son they exiled. They travel to Tob. They find Jephthah among his band of warriors. Their request sounds almost comical after years of rejection. "Come and be our leader, that we may fight against the Ammonites." Jephthah's response drips with bitter irony. "Did you not hate me and drive me from my father's house? Why have you come to me now when you are in distress?" But Jephthah is also practical. He negotiates. If he defeats the Ammonites, he will remain as head over Gilead. The elders agree. They swear before the Lord at Mizpah. The outcast becomes the general. Jephthah tries diplomacy first. He sends messengers to the Ammonite king, arguing Israel's historical claim to the disputed territory. The land was taken not from Ammon, but from the Amorite king Sihon 300 years prior. Ammon has no legitimate grievance. The Ammonite king ignores the argument. War becomes inevitable. The Spirit of the Lord comes upon Jephthah. He gathers forces from Gilead and Manasseh. He prepares to cross into Ammonite territory. But before the battle, Jephthah makes a vow. The vow emerges from desperation mixed with cultural confusion. Jephthah has lived his life on the margins, among pagans, among mercenaries, in lands where child sacrifice to Molech and Chemosh still persists. He knows the Lord, but his theology has been shaped by exile and exposure to Canaanite religious practices. He vows, "If you will give the Ammonites into my hand, then whatever comes out from the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace shall be the Lord's, and I will offer it up as a burnt offering." The language is transactional, conditional. It treats the divine like a business partner who requires payment for services rendered. This is not the faith of Moses. This is syncretism, the blending of Yahweh worship with pagan sacrificial logic. Jephthah crosses into Ammonite territory. He strikes 20 cities. The text says the defeat is very great. The Ammonites are subdued. Gilead is free. Jephthah returns home victorious. The doors of his house open. His daughter comes out to meet him, his only child, dancing with tambourines, celebrating her father's triumph. The narrative pauses. Jephthah tears his clothes. His words reveal immediate recognition of what he has done. "Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low, and you have become the cause of great trouble to me. For I have opened my mouth to the Lord, and I cannot take back my vow." His daughter understands. She asks only for 2 months, time to wander the hills with her companions, time to weep for her virginity, for the children she will never bear, for the life ending before it truly begins. Jephthah grants this request. She goes into the mountains. The text does not follow her there. We are left only with the knowledge that she returns after 2 months, and Jephthah does to her according to his vow. The story does not celebrate this act. It does not frame it as righteous obedience. The silence of God throughout this episode speaks volumes. No angel intervenes as with Abraham and Isaac. No divine voice calls out to stop the blade. The heavens remain closed. What we see instead is the logical conclusion of a judge raised outside covenant community, who learned warfare among pagans, who mixed the worship of the Lord with the transactional cruelty of surrounding religions. Jephthah won a military victory but lost the war for his own soul. The daughter becomes a symbol. Each year, the daughters of the land go out for 4 days to lament the daughter of Jephthah, not to celebrate a martyr, to mourn a waste, to remember what happens when desperation and corrupt theology converge. Jephthah judged the land for 6 years. His victories secured Gilead's borders. But the price paid in his own household reveals how far the nation has fallen from the covenant. The judge who should have embodied the law instead became its most tragic violator. The cycle continues its downward turn. External enemies are defeated, but the rot within remains unaddressed. Each deliverance comes at greater cost. Each judge is more flawed than the last, and still, there is no king in the land. The daughter's price, a horror in the hills. 2 months pass in the highlands. We know little of what happens there. The text gives us only fragments. The daughter of Jephthah and her companions, wandering among the hills, weeping for her virginity. The Hebrew word used is bekuli, her virginity, but also her youth, her potential, her future. In ancient culture, a woman's worth is tragically measured by her ability to continue family lines, to bear sons, to connect past and future. For Jephthah's daughter, all of this will be cut short. She is not named. This matters. The text names many minor characters: Eglon the fat king, Shamgar son of Anath, who struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad, even Purah the servant of Gideon. But Jephthah's daughter exists in the narrative only as Bat Yiftah, daughter of Jephthah. Her identity is consumed by her relationship to the man who will end her life. The 2 months serve multiple purposes. They allow her to process what is coming. They give her time to grieve not for death itself, but for unlived life, the wedding that will never occur, the children never conceived, the household never established. In a culture where continuity through offspring defines meaning, she mourns her erasure from future generations. Her companions go with her. This detail suggests the importance of female solidarity in moments of crisis. While men wage wars and make vows, women create space for grief. They witness, they remember, they refuse to let tragedy pass unacknowledged. When the 2 months end, she returns. The text becomes brutally economical, and at the end of 2 months she returned to her father, who did with her according to his vow that he had made. No description of the act itself. No dwelling on mechanics or methods. The narrative refuses to sensationalize. It presents the horror through absence, through what is not said rather than what is. Some interpreters through history have tried to soften this story. They suggest Jephthah's daughter was not actually offered as a burnt offering, but rather dedicated to lifelong virginity, serving at a shrine. The mourning for her virginity, they argue, supports this reading, but the text resists such comfort. The language of burnt offering is specific and technical. The parallel to Abraham and Isaac makes the contrast sharp. There, God intervened. Here, silence. The story functions precisely because it is horrible, because it shows how completely the judge has failed to understand the God he claims to serve. The law explicitly prohibits child sacrifice. Leviticus and Deuteronomy contain clear commands against offering children to Molech or any deity. Jephthah would have known this. But his life on the margins, his formation among pagans and mercenaries, his desperate need for military victory, all of this warped his understanding of what the Lord requires. He confused devotion with transaction. He treated divine favor as something that could be purchased. In doing so, he committed the very abomination that Israel was supposed to resist, the practice that made Canaanite religion detestable. The story raises questions it refuses to answer. Why did God allow the vow to stand? Why grant military victory if the cost would be innocent life? Why no angel, no voice, no intervention? The text does not provide these answers because the text is not defending God's actions. It is indicting Jephthah's. It is showing a nation that has lost its moral compass so completely that its deliverers become destroyers. After the act, a tradition is established. 4 days each year, The young women of the land go out to commemorate the daughter of Jephthah. Jephthah. The Hebrew word tana is unusual. It could mean lament or recount or even celebrate, though the context makes celebration impossible. This annual ritual serves as collective memory. It refuses to let the crime be forgotten. It creates a space where women's grief over patriarchal violence is given voice and validation. In a book dominated by male warriors and male failings, this tradition centers female experience and female witness. The tradition also stands as accusation. Each year, as daughters go out to remember, they implicitly ask, how did it come to this? How did a judge of the land perform an act that the law explicitly forbids? How did the cycle of deliverance become a cycle of death? Death. Jephthah's daughter becomes a symbol of all that is broken in this era. She represents innocence destroyed by religious confusion, youth consumed by parental desperation, future erased by present crisis. She stands for every victim of violence committed in the name of devotion. The horror is compounded by the fact that Jephthah judged for 6 more years after this event. He continued in leadership. The people accepted him. His military success apparently outweighed his moral catastrophe in the collective assessment of his fitness to lead. This acceptance reveals the depth of societal corruption. When child sacrifice can coexist with recognized leadership, when religious transgression does not disqualify a judge, the nation has lost its ability to discern right from wrong. The story offers no redemption arc for Jephthah. He does not repent. He does not seem to recognize the full weight of what he has done. He made a vow. He kept it. In his mind, perhaps, this constitutes integrity. The text suggests otherwise. Jephthah's daughter remains a ghost in the narrative, unnamed, unburied in any specific place, existing primarily through annual remembrance. She haunts the remainder of Judges, a silent witness to how far the judges have fallen from their calling. Her story marks a point of no return. After this, the book will show us judges who are weaker still, more flawed, more compromised, but none will commit an act quite as stark in its violation of covenant law. Jephthah has shown us the abyss. The rest of the book will show us the nation's descent into it. The Ephraimite civil war, Israel turns on itself. The victory over Ammon should bring peace. Instead, it ignites civil war. The men of Ephraim cross the Jordan River, marching north to confront Jephthah. Their grievance sounds familiar. It echoes their complaint against Gideon years earlier. Why did you cross over to fight against the Ammonites and did not call us to go with you? We will burn your house over you with fire. Ephraim was the dominant tribe of the Central Hill Country, descended from Joseph's son, carrying a sense of entitlement to leadership. They had been Jonathan's tribe, Rachel's lineage. They expected to be consulted to be included to share in both the danger and the glory of military campaigns. Jephthah's response is direct and unapologetic. He reminds them of the crisis. I and my people had a great dispute with the Ammonites. When I called you, you did not save me from their hand. This is the first mention of any such call. The earlier narrative said nothing about Ephraim being summoned and refusing. Either Jephthah is lying or the text has omitted details. Given Jephthah's character, his cunning, his ruthlessness, his skill at negotiation, either option fits. He continues, when I saw that you would not save me, I took my life in my hand and crossed over against the Ammonites, and the Lord gave them into my hand. Why then have you come up to me this day to fight against me? The argument is pragmatic. You weren't there when we needed you. We won anyway. Now you want to complain? The logic is sound, but it does nothing to address Ephraim's wounded pride. What happens next escalates beyond words. Jephthah gathers the men of Gilead and fights against Ephraim. The text gives a reason for Gileadite fury. Because they said, you are fugitives of Ephraim, you Gileadites, in the midst of Ephraim and Manasseh. This insult cuts deep. The Gileadites dwelling east of the Jordan were often viewed as peripheral by the western tribes. To be called fugitives, refugees, dropouts, those who ran away, impugns their legitimacy as part of the covenant nation. It questions their belonging. Insults lead to violence. The Gileadites defeat Ephraim in battle, but victory on the field is only the beginning. What follows is systematic and chilling. The Gileadites capture the fords of the Jordan, the shallow crossing points where the river can be waded. These are strategic choke points. Anyone fleeing from the western side back toward Ephraimite territory must pass through them. The Gileadites establish a test. When fugitives from Ephraim try to cross, claiming they are not Ephraimites but allies or neutrals, the guards ask them to say one word, shibboleth. The word probably means flowing stream or ear of grain, something common, every day. But the pronunciation reveals tribal identity. The Ephraimites cannot form the shesh sound correctly. Their dialect renders it sibboleth. This single phonetic distinction becomes a death sentence. The text records the result with cold precision. Then they would seize him and slaughter him at the fords of the Jordan. At that time, 42,000 of the Ephraimites fell. 42,000. The number is staggering. Even accounting for potential textual inflation or symbolic use of numbers, the scale of unliving is immense. This is not a battle. This is methodical execution. This is ethnic cleansing based on linguistic markers. The shibboleth test reveals something profound about identity and violence. Language becomes destiny. A man's life hangs on the shape of his mouth, the sounds learned in childhood, the accent absorbed from his mother. There is no chance to prove loyalty, no opportunity to demonstrate allegiance. Speech betrays origin, and origin determines survival. This episode marks a turning point in the book. Previous stories showed Israel fighting external enemies, Mesopotamians, Moabites, Midianites, Ammonites, Philistines. Now the violence turns inward. Tribe fights tribe. Israelite sheds Israelite blood. The cycle that was supposed to bring deliverance has become a cycle of self-destruction. The Ephraimite conflict also reveals the fragility of tribal unity. The 12 tribes are bound by covenant, by shared ancestry through Jacob, by collective experience of exodus and conquest. But these bonds prove thin when pride is wounded or resources are threatened. Identity as Israel fractures into competing sub-identities, Ephraimite, Gileadite, Benjaminite. The center cannot hold. Jephthah judges for 6 years total. His tenure includes the victory over Ammon, the sacrifice of his daughter, and the civil war with Ephraim. His legacy is blood, enemy blood, innocent blood, kindred blood. He delivers Gilead from external threat, but leaves the nation more divided than before. After Jephthah comes a succession of minor judges, mentioned briefly. Ibzan of Bethlehem, who had 30 sons and 30 daughters. Elon the Zebulunite, who judged for 10 years. Abdon, who had 40 sons and 30 grandsons, who rode on 70 donkeys. The text notes their prosperity, their offspring, their years of service, but it records no great deeds, no battles, no cycles of oppression and deliverance. Perhaps this is commentary. Perhaps after the horrors of Jephthah's era, even mundane stability counts as success. Or perhaps the text is showing the exhaustion of the judge system, leaders who maintain the status quo, but cannot address the underlying rot. The Ephraimite civil war stands as a warning. When the people of God lose sight of their common identity, when tribal loyalty supersedes covenant loyalty, when linguistic or regional differences become grounds for violence, the nation devours itself. External enemies become almost irrelevant when the greater threat comes from within. The fords of the Jordan, soaked with the blood of 42,000 Ephraimites, testify to this truth. The river that once parted to let Israel enter the Promised Land now runs red with Israel's blood, spilled by Israel's hands. The cycle has turned completely inward, and still there is no king in the land. Samson, the Nazi-right strongman as pop culture icon. The Philistines are different from previous oppressors. They are not raiders from the desert or highland kingdoms pressing territorial claims. They are settlers, organized, equipped with iron technology, established in 5 city-states along the coastal plain: Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Gath. They came to Canaan around the same time as Israel, part of the Sea People's migration that disrupted the entire eastern Mediterranean. While Israel settled the highlands, the Philistines took the coast. For 40 years, they dominate the lowlands and press into the Shephelah, the foothills between coast and mountains. Israel's response to this oppression is notably absent. There is no cry for deliverance recorded. The people seem to have accommodated themselves to Philistine dominance. This makes the Samson cycle unique. God raises up a deliverer even when the people have stopped asking for one. The story begins with a barren couple from the tribe of Dan. The woman has no name in the text. An angel appears to her with an announcement: she will conceive and bear a son. But this son must be a Nazirite from the womb. The Nazirite vow is detailed in Numbers. It requires three things: no wine or strong drink, no cutting of hair, no contact with corpses. The vow is typically temporary, a voluntary act of devotion for a set period. Samson is to be a Nazirite for life, set apart before birth for a specific purpose, to begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. The word begin is significant. Samson will not complete the deliverance. He will not drive out the Philistines or establish peace. He will merely initiate the conflict, start the process. Full deliverance will wait for David, generations later. The boy is born. His name, Shimshon, relates to Shemesh, sun, perhaps a reference to the tribal territory of Dan, bordering the city of Beth Shemesh, house of the sun. The Spirit of the Lord begins to stir him in the camp of Dan between Zorah and Eshtaol. Samson grows into his calling in the most peculiar way imaginable. Unlike previous judges who led armies or executed cunning strategies, Samson operates alone. His battles are personal. His motivations are often petty. His methods are spectacular and strange. The first indication of his character comes when he goes down to Timnah, a Philistine town in the valley. He sees a woman. He returns home and tells his parents simply, "I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife." His parents object. "Is there not a woman among the daughters of your relatives or among all our people that you must go to take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines?" Their concern is understandable. Marriage to Philistines means cultural assimilation, religious compromise, tribal mixing. Samson's response reveals his character. "Get her for me, for she is right in my eyes." What is right in his eyes? The phrase echoes the book's refrain about the era's moral chaos, but here it is personal. Samson follows his appetites, his desires, his immediate impulses. The text adds a crucial note. His father and mother did not know that it was from the Lord, for he was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines. This raises uncomfortable questions. Does God orchestrate Samson's questionable choices? Does divine sovereignty work through human weakness? The text suggests God can use even flawed motives and problematic desires to accomplish his purposes, but it never endorses Samson's behavior. On the way to Timnah, a young lion attacks. The Spirit of the Lord rushes upon Samson. He tears the lion apart with his bare hands as one tears a young goat. The image is visceral, almost playful in its ease. Samson possesses supernatural strength, but he uses it in the most casual, almost careless ways. He continues to Timnah, talks with the woman, pleases him. On a later journey, he turns aside to see the lion's carcass. Bees have made a hive in it. Honey fills the dead body. Samson scoops out the honey with his hands, eats it, shares it with his parents. He does not tell them it came from a corpse. This is the first violation of his Nazirite vow. Contact with a dead body defiles. Samson seems unconcerned. He is set apart for God's purposes, but operates with casual disregard for the conditions of that setting apart. He embodies a paradox, divinely empowered, but personally undisciplined. At the wedding feast in Timnah, Samson poses a riddle to 30 Philistine companions. Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. The riddle is personal, based on his private experience with the lion. No one can solve it. The stakes are high. 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes if they fail. The same from Samson if they succeed. Unable to solve the riddle, the Philistines threaten Samson's bride. "Entice your husband to tell us what the riddle is, lest we burn you and your father's house with fire." She weeps before Samson for 7 days. "You only hate me. You do not love me. You have put a riddle to my people, and you have not told me what it is." Finally, on the 7th day, Samson tells her. She immediately tells the Philistines. They answer the riddle. What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? Samson recognizes the betrayal. "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle." The Spirit of the Lord rushes upon him again. He goes down to Ashkelon, strikes down 30 men, takes their spoil, gives the garments to those who answered the riddle. Then, burning with anger, he returns to his father's house. His wife is given to his companion. This pattern will repeat throughout Samson's story. Personal desire leads to entanglement with Philistines. Betrayal or offense follows. Samson responds with violence. The violence escalates the conflict. The cycle continues, driven not by strategy or divine command, but by Samson's wounded pride and impulsive rage. Yet through this deeply flawed man, God begins to challenge Philistine dominance. Samson is not a model of righteousness. He is not wise or restrained or spiritually mature. He is a weapon, powerful, dangerous, difficult to control. Through his personal vendettas and his spectacular feats of strength, he demonstrates that the Philistines are not invincible, that resistance is possible. The Samson narrative is simultaneously comic and tragic. His exploits read like folk tales, catching foxes, carrying city gates, striking down 1,000 men with a donkey's jawbone. Yet beneath the larger-than-life stories lies a man enslaved to his passions, unable to control his appetites, destined for betrayal and destruction. He is the last judge whose story receives extended treatment. After him comes only chaos, no more charismatic deliverers, only the dark stories of Micah's idol, and the Levite's concubine. Samson represents the end of an era, the final gasp of the judge system, and fittingly, he is the most flawed, most compromised, most tragic of them all. The women of Samson, desire and betrayal. Samson's life revolves around women. 3 women in particular shape his story, each representing a different facet of his character and each leading him deeper into conflict with the Philistines. The first is the woman of Timnah. We know little about her except that Samson saw her and wanted her. The text gives her no name, no voice until the riddle incident. She exists in the narrative primarily as the object of Samson's desire and the instrument of his betrayal. When the Philistines threaten to burn her and her family unless she discovers the riddle's answer, she finds herself trapped between her husband and her people. Her choice is understandable. She protects her family. Yet to Samson, her choice feels like ultimate betrayal. His response is telling. He does not blame the Philistines who threatened her. He does not acknowledge the impossible position she was in. He focuses entirely on her disloyalty to him. "You only hate me. You do not love me," becomes his constant refrain as she weeps before him for 7 days. When he finally tells her and she reveals it to the Philistines, Samson's anger burns hot, but his violence is not directed at her. Instead, he goes down to Ashkelon and strikes down 30 men to pay his bet. Then he leaves, returning to his father's house. The marriage, barely begun, is over. Later, during wheat harvest, Samson returns with a young goat, intending to visit his wife. Her father stops him at the door. "I really thought that you utterly hated her, so I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister more beautiful than she? Please take her instead." This casual disposal of women as property, traded between men like livestock, represents the era's patriarchal brutality. The father tries to manage an awkward situation by offering a substitution, as if women are interchangeable. Samson's response is typically disproportionate. "This time I shall be innocent in regard to the Philistines, when I do them harm." He catches 300 foxes, ties them tail to tail in pairs, attaches torches to each pair, and releases them into the standing grain of the Philistines. The fields burn, the vineyards and olive groves burn. The Philistines retaliate by burning Samson's former wife and her father, the very threat they had used to force her betrayal. Samson avenges them with a great slaughter. The cycle of violence escalates. Personal grievance becomes tribal conflict. The woman of Timnah disappears from the story, consumed by the fire that she tried to prevent, a casualty of forces larger than herself. The second woman appears briefly but significantly. Samson goes to Gaza, a major Philistine city on the coast. He sees a prostitute and goes into her. The Gazites hear that Samson is in the city. They surround the place and set an ambush, planning to strike at daylight. But Samson rises at midnight, grasps the doors of the city gate and the 2 posts, pulls them up with the bar, puts them on his shoulders, and carries them to the top of the hill that is before Hebron. The feat is absurd, comedic, impossible. City gates were massive structures weighing potentially thousands of pounds. The distance to Hebron is roughly 40 miles. Yet Samson, in a display of contempt for the Philistines' attempt to trap him, carries their gate away. The prostitute herself plays no role except as the occasion for Samson's presence in Gaza. She has no lines, no name, no agency. Yet her presence reveals Samson's pattern, his inability to control his desires, his willingness to walk into danger for the sake of immediate gratification. Then comes Delilah. She lives in the valley of Sorek, the borderlands between Israelite and Philistine territory. Samson falls in love with her. The text uses the word ahav, love. This is the only time in the Samson narrative that love is mentioned. Previously, it was desire, attraction, impulse. With Delilah, something deeper emerges. The lords of the Philistines come to Delilah with an offer. Entice him, and see where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to humble him, and we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver. The sum is enormous, 5,500 pieces of silver total from the 5 lords. For perspective, Micah's mother will later consecrate 200 pieces of silver to make an idol. Delilah is being offered a fortune to betray Samson. Her approach is direct. Please tell me where your great strength lies and how you might be bound, that one could subdue you. Samson lies to her 3 times. First, he says fresh bowstrings that have not been dried will bind him. The Philistines bring them. Delilah binds him and calls out, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." He snaps the bowstrings like thread. Second, he says new ropes that have never been used will work. Again, he breaks them like weak thread when she calls the warning. Third, he says weaving the 7 locks of his head into the loom will weaken him. She does so while he sleeps. He wakes and pulls away the pin of the loom and the fabric. Each time Samson is playing with danger. He knows Delilah is trying to betray him. The Philistines are hiding in the chamber each time. Yet he keeps returning, keeps flirting with disaster, keeps testing how close to the edge he can walk. Delilah shifts tactics. She stops asking about his strength and starts attacking his character. How can you say, "I love you," when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times, and you have not told me where your great strength lies. Then comes the key phrase. She pressed him hard with her words day after day and urged him until his soul was vexed to death. She wears him down, not through seduction or trickery, but through relentless, exhausting persistence. She makes his life miserable until telling her seems easier than enduring another day of her complaints. Finally, Samson tells her all his heart. "A razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If my head is shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man." Delilah perceives that he has told her the truth. She sends for the Philistine lords. They come with the money. She makes Samson sleep on her knees. She calls a man to shave off the 7 locks of his head. His strength leaves him. She calls out once more, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." He wakes, thinking he will escape as before, but the text records the tragedy. He did not know that the Lord had left him. The Philistines seize him. They gouge out his eyes. They bring him down to Gaza, bind him with bronze shackles, and set him to grinding at the mill in the prison. The 3 women of Samson's life represent different aspects of his downfall. The woman of Timnah shows his impulsiveness, his refusal to listen to wisdom, his inability to see beyond immediate desire. The prostitute in Gaza shows his recklessness, his contempt for danger, his assumption that strength alone will always save him. Delilah shows his weakness, that beneath all the physical power lies a man desperate for love, vulnerable to manipulation, unable to resist persistent emotional pressure. Yet the women themselves are victims of their circumstances. They navigate a world where men hold power, where tribal conflicts override personal safety, where refusing powerful men means death. They make choices with limited options, trying to survive in a violent era. The text does not vilify them. It shows them as human, caught between competing loyalties, doing what they must to preserve themselves and those they love. Samson's story is often framed as a tale of betrayal by women. More accurately, it is a story of a man who repeatedly placed himself in positions where betrayal became inevitable, who ignored warning after warning, who chose desire over duty again and again until the consequences could no longer be escaped. Gaza, blindness, and the mill, the humiliation of strength. The Philistines take Samson to Gaza. This is deliberate. Gaza was where he once carried off the city gates in mockery. Now he returns in chains. They gouge out his eyes. The Hebrew word nakar suggests a violent, forceful removal. This is not a surgical procedure. This is mutilation designed to inflict maximum pain and humiliation. Blinding was a common practice for prisoners in the ancient world. It removed the possibility of escape while leaving the victim capable of labor. For Samson, the physical blindness mirrors a deeper spiritual blindness that has characterized his entire life. He could never see beyond his immediate desires. He could never perceive the consequences of his actions. He walked confidently into danger, certain of his strength, blind to his vulnerabilities. Now the external condition matches the internal reality. They bind him with bronze shackles. Bronze is significant. Iron was the Philistines' technological advantage, the metal they controlled and restricted from Israelite hands. To bind Samson with bronze rather than iron might suggest they are using what is available, or it might indicate they are reserving their superior metal for weapons. Either way, the shackles are strong enough. The man who snapped bowstrings and new ropes like thread now shuffles in chains. They bring him to the prison house in Gaza. The text says he ground at the mill. This is work typically assigned to women or the lowest slaves. A mill in this period would be a large stone grindstone, requiring hours of repetitive circular motion to grind grain into flour. The work is backbreaking, monotonous, degrading. Samson, who once tore apart a lion with his bare hands, now pushes a millstone in circles. The judge who was supposed to deliver Israel grinds grain for his enemies. The Nazirite set apart from the womb labors like a beast of burden in a Philistine prison. The scene is designed to break him psychologically as much as physically. The Philistines have not ended him quickly. They have chosen a slow, public humiliation. They parade him as a trophy, a warning, a demonstration of Philistine superiority. The mighty Samson reduced to this. We can imagine the conditions. The darkness would be absolute for him now. The sound of the millstone against stone, the smell of grain dust, the weight of the shackles, the endless circular path, days blurring into weeks. No horizon, no future, no hope of change. Yet something shifts in this darkness. The text records it almost as an aside, but the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. This detail is easy to miss, but it is crucial. The hair grows back. The physical sign of the Nazirite vow returns. This suggests something more than mere biological process. It hints at spiritual renewal, at a restoration of the relationship with the Lord that was severed when Delilah shaved his head. In the grinding prison, Samson has time to think. Perhaps for the first time in his life, he cannot act impulsively. He cannot run toward the next desire, the next conflict, the next woman. He can only push the millstone and reflect on how he arrived here. The prison becomes a place of formation. Samson entered Gaza as a captive, broken and humiliated, but he will not leave the same man. The time grinding at the mill, though intended as degradation, becomes the crucible in which the judge finally begins to understand his calling. This pattern of humiliation leading to insight, of suffering producing character, of darkness preparing for deliverance, recurs throughout biblical narrative. Joseph in Pharaoh's prison, David hiding in caves, Jonah in the fish. The lowest points become turning points when the individual finally stops relying on their own strength and turns to the Lord. For Samson, the journey has been particularly long. Unlike Joseph or David, who maintained faith through their trials, Samson has spent his entire life pursuing his own agenda, using his God-given strength for personal vendettas, mixing the sacred calling with profane desires. The prison represents the consequences of that path. Yet even in consequences, grace appears. The hair grows back, the possibility of restoration emerges. Samson has lost his physical sight, but perhaps he is beginning to gain spiritual vision. The Philistines, meanwhile, celebrate. They do not notice the growing hair. They do not sense the spiritual shift occurring in their prisoner. They see only the man they have defeated, the threat they have neutralized. They are preparing a great festival to Dagon, their god, to celebrate the victory. They attribute Samson's capture to Dagon's power. Our God has given our enemy into our hand, the ravager of our country, who has unlived many of us. From their perspective, this makes sense. Samson has been the scourge of Philistia for years. His capture is a religious victory as much as a military one. The festival will be the setting for Samson's final act, but that act will emerge from this time of grinding, this season of darkness, this period when the mighty judge was reduced to nothing and forced to confront who he really was without his strength. Gaza, the place of his greatest triumph when he carried off the gates, has become the place of his deepest humiliation. Yet it will also be the place of his final costly deliverance. The city that witnessed his mockery of Philistine power will witness his ultimate challenge to it, though the cost will be everything he has left. The mill keeps turning. The hair keeps growing. The Philistines keep celebrating. And in the darkness, a plan begins to form, not of escape, not of survival, but of one last strike against the enemies of his people, one final act that might begin to fulfill the purpose for which he was set apart before birth. Dagon's temple, the final reckoning. The Philistines gather for a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god. Dagon is a grain deity worshipped throughout the eastern Mediterranean. The Philistines adopted him when they settled in Canaan, incorporating local deities into their religious system. The temple at Gaza would be one of several dedicated to him throughout Philistine territory. The occasion is celebration. Our God has given our enemy into our hand. They have captured Samson, the man who terrorized them for 20 years, the man who burned their crops, struck down their warriors, carried off their city gates. Now he is blind, chained, broken. The victory feels complete. As the celebration intensifies, someone suggests bringing out Samson to entertain them. Call Samson that he may entertain us. The word translated entertain is sahak. It can mean to laugh, to play, to mock. They want to see their enemy humiliated. They want to parade their trophy. They want to laugh at the judge who once made them afraid. A young servant leads Samson from the prison. The blind judge shuffles forward in his chains, guided by the boy's hand. They bring him into the temple, positioning him between the pillars. Samson speaks to the boy. Let me feel the pillars on which the house rests, that I may lean against them. It sounds like a reasonable request. A blind man wanting something to steady himself, to rest his weight. The boy complies, positioning Samson between the two central pillars. The temple is full. The text says about 3,000 men and women are on the roof, watching the spectacle below. The lords of the Philistines are present, all 5 rulers of the major cities. This is the highest concentration of Philistine leadership in one place. Architectural details matter here. Philistine temples of this period, based on archaeological evidence, featured a roof supported by wooden columns set on stone bases. The weight distribution meant that if the central supporting pillars failed, the entire structure would collapse catastrophically. Samson stands between these pillars. The crowd watches. They call for him to perform, to dance, that to amuse them. The scene is grotesque. A nation mocking a blind captive, celebrating their triumph over the god he represents. Then Samson prays. It is the first recorded prayer of his life. Throughout all his exploits, through all his battles and escapes, he has never been shown calling on the Lord. His actions were driven by impulse, anger, desire. Even when the Spirit came upon him, it seemed to overpower him rather than flow from relationship. Now in his final moment, he prays, O Lord God, please remember me, and please strengthen me only this once, O God, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. The prayer is honest. Samson does not pretend to noble motives. He does not claim to be acting for Israel's deliverance or God's glory. He wants revenge for his eyes. He wants to strike back at those who have humiliated him. It is personal, visceral, human. Yet even in this flawed prayer, there is faith. Samson acknowledges his dependence on the Lord. He recognizes that without divine strength, he is helpless. He asks, and in asking, he submits himself to divine purpose, even as he pursues his own vengeance. The Lord answers. The text does not say the Spirit rushes upon him as in previous moments of strength. It simply records what happens next. Samson grasps the 2 middle pillars. He braces himself, one hand on each. He says, Let me die with the Philistines. Then he pushes with all his might. The pillars shift on their stone bases. The structure begins to fail. The roof, laden with 3,000 spectators, tilts. Timbers crack. Stone crumbles. The temple collapses. The weight of the roof crushes everyone inside. The lords of the Philistines perish. The warriors, the celebrants, the priests of Dagon, all are buried in rubble. Samson is among them. The text records his death without drama. So the dead whom he had caused to perish at his death were more than those whom he had caused to perish during his life. This final tally is telling. All of Samson's years of personal vendettas, his foxtail torches and donkey jawbone battles, his raids and escapes, all of this was less impactful than his final act of self-destruction. His death accomplishes more for Israel's deliverance than his life. The assessment is both tragic and profound. Samson's entire existence was marked by wasted potential. The Nazirites, set apart from birth to deliver Israel, spent 2 decades pursuing women, settling personal scores, ignoring his calling. Only in death, only when he had nothing left to lose, did he strike a blow that genuinely weakened Philistine power. His brothers and his father's household come down to retrieve his body from the rubble. They carry him back to the hill country, to the region between Zorah and Eshtaol, where the Spirit first began to stir him. They bury him in the tomb of Manoah, his father. The text concludes, he had judged Israel 20 years. 20 years. An entire generation. Yet what did those years accomplish? Samson did not drive out the Philistines. He did not unite the tribes. He did not establish justice or teach the law. He fought a personal war that occasionally aligned with national interest, but was motivated primarily by revenge and passion. His death in Dagon's temple becomes the most ambiguous moment in the book. Is it victory or defeat? Is it faithful devotion or ultimate selfishness? Is it redemption or final failure? The text allows all these readings. Samson does strike a blow against Philistine power. The elimination of the lords and thousands of warriors weakens their ability to oppress Israel. In this sense, he begins to accomplish his calling, to begin to save Israel from Philistine domination. Yet the means are troubling. Samson commits suicide, taking thousands with him. He acts from revenge, not righteousness. His final prayer is about personal vengeance, not national deliverance. He chooses death not because it is required for victory, but because he has nothing left to live for. The collapse of Dagon's temple is also symbolically rich. The Philistines credited their god with Samson's capture. Our God has given our enemy into our hand. The celebration in Dagon's temple was meant to honor that God's superiority over the Lord. The collapse demolishes that claim. Dagon's temple cannot protect Dagon's worshippers. The God of grain is powerless against the God of Israel, working through a blind, broken judge. The theological message is clear, even if the ethical situation remains murky. Samson's story ends without resolution. He delivers partial deliverance at great cost. He demonstrates faith in his final act, but fails to live faithfully. He is buried with honor, but dies in shame. He represents the contradictions of the entire era. Divine calling mixed with human failure scribed, strength undermined by weakness, deliverance achieved through destruction. After Samson, the text will record no more judges rising to deliver Israel. The cycle has exhausted itself. What follows is not more heroic figures, but stories of complete societal breakdown, idolatry institutionalized, violence normalized, civil war consuming the nation. Samson is the end of an era, and his ambiguous death marks the failure of the judge system to bring lasting peace or righteousness to the land. Micah's idol and the Danite migration, tribal anarchy. The narrative shifts. There are no more heroic judges to chronicle. What follows instead are two extended stories that reveal the depth of spiritual and moral collapse. The first involves a man named Micah from the hill country of Ephraim. The story begins with theft. Micah admits to his mother that he stole 1,100 pieces of silver from her. She had pronounced a curse on whoever took it. Frightened by the curse, Micah confesses and returns the silver. His mother's response is revealing. I dedicate the silver to the Lord from my hand for my son, to make a carved image and a metal one. She claims devotion to the Lord while immediately violating the second commandment. She takes 200 pieces of the returned silver and gives them to a silversmith who makes an idol. The idol goes into Micah's house. Micah already has a shrine. The text says he had a house of gods. He makes an ephod and household gods. He installs one of his sons as priest. The accumulation of religious objects suggests a personal cult, a private worship system that blends elements of Israelite faith with pagan practice. The narrator interjects, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. This is the first occurrence of this refrain in its full form. It will repeat at the end of each of the final stories, framing the chaos as the result of absent leadership. But the phrase also suggests something deeper, not just political anarchy, but moral relativism. Without external authority, each person becomes their own ultimate reference point for right and wrong. A Levite from Bethlehem in Judah comes wandering through the area looking for a place to stay. Levites are supposed to serve at sanctuaries, to teach the law, to maintain covenant faithfulness. This Levite is unemployed, itinerant, apparently unconcerned about the unauthorized shrine he encounters. Micah recognizes an opportunity. Stay with me, and be to me a father and a priest, and I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year, and a suit of clothes, and your living. The Levite agrees. Micah installs him as priest of his personal shrine. The text notes Micah's satisfaction. Now I know that the Lord will prosper me because I have a Levite as priest. The logic is magical thinking. If I have the right religious professionals and objects, prosperity will follow automatically. Micah confuses form with substance, assuming that external religious correctness guarantees divine favor regardless of whether the worship itself is legitimate. This private religious operation might have remained a footnote, but the tribe of Dan becomes involved. Dan was allotted territory in the coastal lowlands between the hill country and Philistine cities, but the Danites were unable to secure their inheritance. The Amorites pressed them back into the hills. Philistine power hemmed them in. Faced with this pressure, the tribe decides to find new territory. They send 5 men from their clan to spy out the land. These men pass through the hill country of Ephraim. They stop at Micah's house, apparently recognizing the Levite's voice, suggesting he may have been from their region originally. They ask him, "Who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? What is your business here?" The Levite explains his employment arrangement. The spies then make a request. "Inquire of God, please, that we may know whether the journey on which we are setting out will succeed." The Levite responds, "Go in peace. The journey on which you go is under the eye of the Lord." This is religious authority being purchased and deployed for tribal interests with no reference to actual covenant requirements or divine will. The Levite offers a blessing based on nothing. No consultation with the Lord, no prophetic revelation, merely the words the Danites want to hear. The spies continue north. They reach Laish, a city far in the north near the sources of the Jordan. The people there are quiet and unsuspecting, living in the manner of the Sidonians, peaceful and secure. The city is isolated, far from Sidon, with no alliances to protect it. The spies return to Dan with their report. "Arise, and let us go up against them, for we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. Arise, and do not be slow. Do not be slow to go to enter in and possess the land." 600 Danite warriors set out with their families. They pass again through Ephraim, camping near Micah's house. The 5 spies inform their companions about the shrine. "Do you know that in these houses there are an ephod, household gods, a carved image, and a metal one? Now therefore consider what you will do." The warriors understand immediately. They turn aside to the house. While the 600 armed men stand at the gate, the 5 spies enter and take the carved image, the ephod, the household gods, and the metal image. The Levite comes out, confused. "What are you doing?" The Danites make him an offer. "Keep quiet, put your hand on your mouth, and come with us, and be to us a father and a priest. Is it better for you to be priest to the house of one man, or to be priest to a tribe and clan in Israel?" The appeal is to ambition and status. The Levite's heart is glad. He takes the ephod and household gods and carved image and goes along with the people. Micah's priest defects to a larger operation without hesitation. Micah discovers the theft. He gathers his neighbors and pursues the Danites. When he catches up, he shouts at them, "You take away my gods that I made in the priest and go away. And what have I left? How then do you ask me, what is the matter with you?" The pathos would be almost comic if it weren't so tragic. "My gods that I made." The statement reveals the complete inversion of true worship. Gods are supposed to create and protect worshipers, not the reverse. Micah's complaint shows he understands his deities as property, objects he produced and now has been stolen. The Danites respond with threats. "Do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows fall upon you and you lose your life with the lives of your household." Facing 600 warriors, Micah turns back. The text says simply, "When Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his home." The Danites continue to Laish. They strike the unsuspecting city with the edge of the sword. They burn it. They rebuild the city and settle there, renaming it Dan after their ancestor. Then they set up the carved image for themselves. The text names the Levite, Jonathan, son of Gershom, son of Moses. This genealogy is startling. The grandson of Moses, the lawgiver, becomes the priest of an idolatrous shrine in a city conquered through violence. The narrator adds, and the Danites set up the carved image for themselves, and Jonathan, the son of Gershom, son of Moses, and his sons were priests to the tribe of the Danites until the day of the captivity of the land. The idol established by Micah, stolen by the Danites, and maintained by Moses' descendants continues for generations. What begins as personal corruption becomes tribal tradition, persisting until foreign conquest finally ends it. The story concludes with a time marker. So they set up Micah's carved image that he made, as long as the house of God was at Shiloh. While the legitimate sanctuary at Shiloh operates, this alternative illegitimate shrine functions in parallel. The two coexist, authorized worship and idolatrous corruption side by side in the land. This entire episode reveals the complete breakdown of religious order. A mother curses a thief and then makes an idol. A man creates a private shrine and hires a priest. A Levite abandons his calling for money. Tribal warriors steal religious objects and attack peaceful cities. Moses' descendant serves at an idolatrous altar for generations. There is no deliverance here, no judge, no divine intervention. There is only the logical result of everyone doing what is right in their own eyes. The absence of central authority, no king in Israel, allows this chaos. But the deeper problem is the absence of covenant faithfulness in individual hearts and households. The Danites secure new territory through violence, but they carry their corruption with them. Geographic relocation does not solve spiritual problems. The idol goes from Ephraim to the far north, spreading the infection rather than escaping it. The story of Micah and the Danites shows how personal sin becomes communal sin, how private compromises scale into public catastrophes, how religious confusion in one generation establishes false traditions for the next. It is a society devouring itself spiritually, preparing for the moral horror that follows. The Levite's concubine, the abyss of depravity. The final story in Judges is the darkest. It involves a Levite, his concubine, and an act of violence so extreme that it shatters any remaining hope for the era. A Levite living in the remote hill country of Ephraim takes a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. She becomes angry with him, or perhaps unfaithful. The Hebrew is ambiguous, and returns to her father's house in Bethlehem. She stays there 4 months. The Levite decides to go after her, to speak kindly to her and bring her back. He takes his servant and a couple of donkeys. When he arrives, the woman's father sees him and welcomes him gladly. The father persuades him to stay for several days, offering hospitality and provisions. On the 5th day, the Levite finally sets out in the afternoon. As evening approaches, they are near Jebus, which is Jerusalem. The servant suggests they stop there for the night. The Levite refuses. We will not turn aside into the city of foreigners who do not belong to the people of Israel, but we will pass on to Gibeah. The logic is revealing. The Levite prefers to risk traveling at night rather than seek hospitality among non-Israelites. He assumes safety among his own people, danger among outsiders. This assumption will prove catastrophically wrong. They reach Gibeah, a town belonging to Benjamin, as the sun sets. They sit down in the open square of the city. No one takes them into his house for the night. In ancient Near Eastern culture, hospitality toward travelers was sacred duty. The absence of welcome is the first warning sign. Finally, an old man comes in from his work in the field. He is not originally from Gibeah, but from the hill country of Ephraim, living as a sojourner among the Benjaminites. When he sees the travelers in the square, he asks where they are going. Learning they have no place to stay, he offers his house. Peace be to you. I will care for all your wants. Only do not spend the night in the square. The warning is explicit. Something about Gibeah makes spending the night in public dangerous. The old man brings them to his house, provides for their animals, washes their feet, gives them food and drink. They are eating and drinking, making their hearts merry when the night reveals its true nature. Men of the city, worthless fellows, surround the house. They beat on the door. They call to the old man, "Bring out the man who came into your house, that we may know him." The language echoes Sodom. The men want to rape the visitor. This is violation of hospitality, sexual violence, abuse of power, all condensed into one demand. The old man goes out to them. His response mirrors Lot's in Genesis. "No, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Since this man has come into my house, do not do this vile thing. Behold, here are my virgin daughter and his concubine. Let me bring them out now. Violate them and do with them what seems good to you, but against this man do not do this outrageous thing. The offer is horrifying. To protect male honor and the sacred duty of hospitality, the old man is willing to sacrifice women. The hierarchy is explicit. Male guests matter more than female household members. The men refuse to listen. The situation escalates. The Levite seizes his concubine and puts her out to them. The text is stark, and they knew her and abused her all night until the morning. The verb knew is sexual. The verb abused suggests extreme violence. This continues from evening until dawn. As the morning appears, they let her go. She makes her way back to the house where her master is staying. She falls down at the door and lies there until daylight. The text does not say whether she is conscious or already deceased. In the morning, the Levite rises to go on his way. He opens the doors of the house. He finds his concubine lying at the threshold with her hands on the doorstep. He speaks to her, "Get up, let us be going." There is no answer. She is either dead or so damaged she cannot respond. The Levite's first words are not concern for her condition, but a command to continue traveling. He puts her on the donkey and sets out for his home. When he arrives, he takes a knife. He grasps his concubine and divides her, limb by limb, into 12 pieces. He sends her throughout all the territory of the land governed by the tribes. The act is calculated to shock. By dividing the body into 12 pieces and sending them to each tribe, the Levite creates a visual representation of the atrocity and demands response. The method echoes Saul's later action when he cut apart oxen to summon Israel to war. The text records the reaction. And all who saw it said, "Such a thing has never happened or been seen from the day that the people of Israel came up out of the land of the areas controlled by the pharaohs until this day. Consider it, take counsel, and speak." The tribes assemble at Mizpah. 400,000 foot soldiers gather, waiting to hear what happened. The Levite tells his version of events. He came to Gibeah with his concubine. The men of Gibeah rose against him, surrounded the house, intending to end his life. They violated his concubine, and she perished. His account omits his own role, that he seized her and thrust her out to the mob. He frames himself purely as victim, her death as something done to him rather than something he facilitated. The self-serving nature of his testimony goes unchallenged. The assembled tribes respond with unanimous outrage. They vow not to return home until Gibeah is punished. They demand Benjamin hand over the guilty men. "Now, therefore, give up the men, the worthless fellows in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and purge evil from Israel." Benjamin refuses. They rally to defend Gibeah instead. 26,000 Benjaminite warriors gather, including 700 chosen men from Gibeah itself. The tribe chooses tribal loyalty over justice. Civil war erupts. The first day, the tribes attack, and Benjamin strikes down 22,000 men. The tribes weep before the Lord, but receive encouragement to fight again. The second day, Benjamin strikes down 18,000 more. 40,000 Israelites fall in 2 days. The tribes are in crisis. They go to Bethel, weeping, fasting, offering burnt offerings and peace offerings. They inquire of the Lord whether they should continue. The Lord answers, "Go up, for tomorrow I will give them into your hand." The third day, the tribes use strategy. They set an ambush, draw Benjamin out of the city, then execute a flanking maneuver. Gibeah is captured and burned. 25,100 Benjaminite warriors fall. The tribe is nearly annihilated. 600 Benjaminite men escape to the rock of Rimmon, where they remain for 4 months. The rest of the tribes, in their rage, put every city of Benjamin to the sword. Men, beasts, everything found. They burn all the towns. After the battle, the tribes gather at Bethel. They weep again, bitterly. They have nearly destroyed one of their own tribes. They realize they have taken an oath at Mizpah. "No one of us shall give his daughter in marriage to Benjamin." This oath means the 600 surviving Benjaminites have no way to continue their line. The tribe will die out. The tribes lament, "What shall we do for wives for those who are left, since we have sworn by the Lord that we will not give them any of our daughters for wives?" Their solution reveals the continued moral bankruptcy. They notice that Jabesh-Gilead sent no warriors to the assembly. They send 12,000 soldiers to strike the inhabitants of Jabesh-Gilead. They spare only 400 young virgins, whom they bring to the surviving Benjaminites. 400 is not enough. The Benjaminites still need 200 more wives. The tribes devise another plan. They instruct the Benjaminites to hide in the vineyards near Shiloh. When the daughters of Shiloh come out to dance at the yearly feast, the Benjaminites should rush out and each seize a wife. This plan involves mass abduction. The tribes justify it through twisted logic. The fathers of Shiloh have not given their daughters, so technically the oath is not broken. The daughters are stolen, not given. The Benjaminites do as instructed. They seize wives from the dancers. They return to their territory and rebuild their cities. The tribe survives, but through violence and violation. The book ends with its final refrain. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. This story shows a society in complete collapse. A Levite treats his concubine as property, sacrificing her to save himself. The men of Gibeah commit gang rape unto death. The tribes wage civil war that nearly erases a tribe. Solutions involve more violence, massacring Jabesh Gilead, abducting women from Shiloh. Every attempt to address evil produces more evil. Every solution creates new victims. The cycle of violence spirals completely out of control, and through it all, no one repents. No one questions the fundamental assumptions about power, honor, and violence that drive the society. The woman, the concubine, is the ultimate victim. She has no name, no voice except when asking to leave. She is betrayed by the Levite, violated by Gibeah, dismembered as a message, but never mourned as a person. Her death prompts war, but no one grieves for her specifically. This is the nadir of Judges. This is where everyone did what was right in his own eyes leads. Not to freedom or flourishing, but to atrocity piled upon atrocity until the very fabric of covenant community has disintegrated. The story of the Levite's concubine is not told to entertain. It is told to horrify, to warn, to show the inevitable result of abandoning covenant faithfulness. When there is no king, no central authority, no shared moral framework, no accountability, darkness prevails. No king in Israel, the desperate conclusion. The book of Judges concludes not with triumph, but with trauma. The narrative that began with the death of Joshua and the question of leadership ends with civil war, mass atrocity, and the haunting refrain, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes." This refrain appears 4 times in the final chapters, framing the stories of Micah's idol and the Levite's concubine. It functions as both diagnosis and prognosis, an explanation for the chaos and a suggestion about the solution. The diagnosis is clear. Without centralized leadership, without a unifying authority, the tribal confederation has failed. Each tribe pursues its own interest. Each individual follows personal desire. The result is not freedom, but fracture, not autonomy, but anarchy. The cycle of Judges was supposed to preserve Israel. When enemies oppressed, the Lord raised up deliverers. These judges pushed back threats and provided temporary peace. For a time, the pattern seemed sustainable. But across the book, the pattern degrades. The judges themselves become less heroic, more compromised, more morally ambiguous. Othniel is nearly mythic in his perfection. Gideon starts well, but ends creating an idol. Jephthah makes a horrific vow. Samson spends his life in personal vendettas. By the end, no judges rise at all, only ordinary people committing extraordinary evil. The enemies also shift. Early in the book, threats come from outside. Mesopotamians, Moabites, Midianites, Ammonites, Philistines. Foreign powers press in on Israelite territory. The judges repel these invasions. But by the final stories, the enemy is internal. The rot is within the tribes themselves. Micah's idolatry, the Danites' violence, Gibeah's depravity, the civil war against Benjamin, these are not external threats, but internal failures. The progression is intentional. The book shows a society disintegrating from within. External enemies exploit weakness, but the fundamental problem is spiritual and moral collapse. Covenant unfaithfulness produces social chaos. Each cycle should have led to repentance. Each deliverance should have resulted in renewed commitment to the Lord and his law. Instead, the pattern becomes mechanical. Oppression leads to crying out, but the crying is merely pragmatic, a request for relief, not a turning from sin. After deliverance, the people return to their former ways. The judges themselves model syncretism rather than faithfulness. Gideon makes an ephod that becomes a snare. Jephthah mixes Yahweh worship with pagan sacrifice. Even the deliverers cannot maintain covenant purity. The final chapters remove the cycle entirely. There is no oppression, no cry, no judge, no deliverance. There is only the daily reality of a society without moral center. Idolatry normalized, violence routine, women treated as property, tribal bonds dissolving into civil war. The refrain, "No king in Israel," points toward monarchy as solution. The Book of Judges was likely compiled during or after the monarchy, looking back at the pre-monarchic period through that lens. From the perspective of a later editor, the chaos of the Judges era demonstrates the need for centralized authority. But the conclusion is ambiguous. Yes, monarchy will bring order. Saul, David, Solomon will establish a kingdom, create institutions, centralize power, but the monarchy itself will become corrupt. Kings will pursue idolatry. The nation will divide. Eventually, foreign conquest will vindicate the prophets who warned that human kingship could never substitute for faithfulness to the divine king. So the ending of Judges is not simply pro-monarchy propaganda. It is more nuanced. The lack of king produces chaos, yes, but the refrain can also be read as theological. There was no king, meaning no one acknowledged the Lord's kingship. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes, meaning they rejected the law given through Moses. The solution is not merely political structure, but spiritual reformation. What the nation needs is not just a human king, but a return to covenant faithfulness, a recognition that the Lord is their true king, a submission to his law rather than individual preference. Judges shows what happens when religious and moral relativism prevails. Right in his own eyes means subjective morality, each person as their own ultimate authority. The result is predictable. The strong dominate the weak, violence escalates, atrocity becomes normalized. The women of the book suffer most in this system. They have no names, no agency, no protection. The daughter of Jephthah is sacrificed. The concubine is gang raped and dismembered. The daughters of Shiloh are abducted. Women bear the cost of male honor, male violence, male failure. This is not incidental. It is central to the book's critique. A society that treats women as property, that sacrifices daughters to preserve fathers' vows, that offers females to mobs to protect male guests, this society has lost its moral compass entirely. The law given through Moses included protections for the vulnerable. Widows, orphans, foreigners, the poor, all were to receive justice and care. The society depicted at the end of Judges has abandoned these protections entirely. Might makes right. Power determines morality. The book leaves readers in suspense. The problem is diagnosed. The chaos is depicted in graphic detail. But the solution remains unclear. Will a human king solve this? Will monarchy bring the order and justice the nation desperately needs? The following books, Samuel and Kings, will answer these questions. Spoiler: the monarchy helps, but does not ultimately solve the problem. Human kings prove as flawed as judges. The need for a different kind of king, a righteous ruler who embodies rather than violates the covenant, will become increasingly apparent. But that is beyond Judges. The book ends in darkness, with a nation teetering on the edge of collapse, having exhausted the judge system, awaiting whatever comes next. The cycle of sin, oppression, cry, and deliverance has failed. It produced temporary relief, but no lasting change. Each generation repeated the pattern, sometimes getting worse. The judges themselves embodied the problem rather than the solution. The Book of Judges is brutally honest about this failure. It does not romanticize the past or claim the judges were heroes without fault. It shows them as they were, flawed, compromised, often violent, occasionally faithful, always inadequate. The book also refuses to offer easy answers. It does not end with restoration or hope. It ends with civil war, mass death, and the recognition that something fundamental has broken. For ancient readers, the message was clear. This is why we needed kings. For modern readers, the message may be different. This is what happens when societies abandon shared moral frameworks, when power replaces justice, when everyone does what is right in their own eyes. Judges stands as warning. It shows the dark side of freedom without responsibility, autonomy without accountability, strength without righteousness. It depicts a society consuming itself, judges who cannot judge rightly, deliverers who cannot deliver completely. And it poses the question that will echo through the rest of Israel's history. Who can rule justly? Who can lead faithfully? Who can break the cycle of sin and failure? The Book of Judges knows the judges cannot. The question is whether the kings can, or whether Israel needs a different kind of king entirely.